Good morning. The May 4th Board of Education meeting is now in session. Please rise for the invocation. O God, we pray to administer that which is just in all educational policies, being ever mindful of your guidance, stir us to action with love, wisdom, and understanding. The pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item 2.03, approval of the minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes? Mr. Gilliland. Okay. Are you modifying? Patty, you're seconding? I second. Okay.
For modification, sorry. For the April 6th exec session minutes, it accurately notes that I arrived at 9:55, but the motion to close still notes 9:0, so that should be changed to 8:0.
Okay, all those in favor of approving the minutes as amended? Motion passes 9-0-0. Item 2.04, establish agenda order. Mrs. Nally.
I move that the board add item 2.11, International Parent and Community Advisory Board Report, to today's agenda.
Second. All those in favor? The agenda item 2.11 has been added. Item 2.05, recognitions. Ms. McCurdy.
Good morning. I'm Carol Ann McCurdy, Director of Partnerships, Development, and Marketing, and I'm here today to introduce our board recognition. Before we begin, I'd like to ask the board and Dr. Arlotto to please come forward. Members of the board and Dr. Arlotto, today we are thrilled to recognize 14 parents and community members who have spent many hours over the last 2 months participating in our 6th annual International Parent and Community Leadership Academy. The goal of the Academy is simple: to improve communication with international families and, equally important, to diversify the pool of leaders in our schools and in our communities so that we can better support the academic achievement of all of our students. Not surprisingly, our community engagement surveys have shown this to be a need for our school system, and initiatives such as this one have gone a long way toward building the bridges that are so crucial for our students. Our participants in this academy represent 12 different nationalities and speak 11 different languages. Throughout the sessions, they have learned about each other and how the education system works in this country, and specifically here in AACPS. As is the case every year, we have learned as much from them as they have from us. Together, we have worked hard to develop necessary leadership skills, made progress toward becoming culturally proficient leaders, and discussed at length the many challenges facing immigrant students and their families. The work, of course, will continue far beyond today, but I am pleased to tell you that all of our participants plan to pursue at least one leadership opportunity in the future. And now I'd like to invite Laura Gardner to introduce our class members, who will come forward as their names are announced.
All right, we're going to start on this side. So first, I'm going to invite Mai No from Vietnam up to the front. Come on up, Mai. Want to walk around? Yeah. Next, we have Humaira Saeed from Pakistan. And then we have Aisha Bohm from Uzbekistan. No, Kazakhstan. Oh, Kazakhstan, so close. Next, we have Rudwan Abu Ruman from Jordan. We have Angela Nambiar from Colombia. Deyanira Feliz from Dominican Republic, right? Yes. Joaquin Corradini from Argentina. Okay. We have Gisela Ruiz de Castilla from Peru. Jennifer Calabro with Cuban roots. Paula Unger from Peru. Where are we at? We have Chung Lindsay from Korea. And Youngmi Lee from Korea. I'd also like to recognize Mr. Joe Hudson, who could not be here with us today. He's the Hispanic liaison to the Annapolis Police, but was unfortunately called to federal court. So I think, did we get everybody? All right, well, let's give a round of applause to all of our applicants. We'll do a picture? Okay, I think now we'll take a picture.
Next, we have Educator of the Month, Mrs. Hummer.
Many schools across the United States are testing out an alternative to the way classrooms have been arranged for decades, where students typically spend up to 2/3 of their day sitting. One teacher commented, "I started thinking about how many times a day I ask my students to sit down or to stay seated, and yet being sedentary all day seated at desk might not be the best way to learn." With that in mind, the Board of Education would like to recognize an educator in our school system who really teaches his students to think on their feet. Chris Wukich, 7th grade social studies teacher at Meade Middle School, had an innovative idea one day, and after a brainstorming session with the school's tech ed teacher, came up with the ever-popular Wookie. Mr. Wukich's Wookie is simply a stack of milk crates with a hard desktop attached so that students can stand at their desk and learn. Teachers at the school have said that the Wookie has promoted positive changes in the growth of the students as it allows them to learn in a way that was not available to them before. A stand-up desk offers many benefits for health, comfort, and ergonomics. Using one can make you more alert, energetic, and focused on the task at hand. It also encourages you to stay active throughout the day, as movement is a good way to stay fit and healthy during the school day. Chris Wukich always has the children's best interest at heart at all times. He knows that standing throughout the day increases blood circulation and thus alertness. Studies have shown that children, no matter their age, pay more attention when they aren't sitting for long periods of time. If you want productive and focused students in your classroom, assign them a Wookiee. Chris Wukich, you are on the cutting edge of classroom innovation. Study after study across America and Canada have shown the benefits of the stand-up desk for students. Your Wookiees have become a very popular idea amongst the students at Meade Middle, and staff at the school have become excited with the prospect of using Wookiees in their classroom. We understand that the Wookiees can be shown to all schools within the district, and easy-to-follow videos can be made to help other schools give children the option to stand and learn so they don't feel restricted to simply sitting. So hopefully other schools will stand up for themselves and jump on the Wookiee bandwagon. On a personal note, Mr. Wukich taught my twins last year, so I know that he's an excellent teacher all the way around, Wookiees and everything. On behalf of the Board of Education and the students, teachers, and staff of Anne Arundel County Public Schools, we are pleased to recognize you Educator of the Month for May 2016. Congratulations. Please join me up front. Bell, so now you can call them in line.
Can I use that in school?
You can, to get them to their Wookiees.
All right.
You can have it there. So
Okay.
here you go. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Item 2.07 is Employee of the Month, Mrs. Sasso.
It has been 33 years since Congress declared the month of May National Physical Fitness and Sports Month in America. And there can't be a better time to celebrate physical activity as the warm weather and sunshine make their way into our lives. There also can't be a better time for the Board of Education to recognize an employee in our school system who keeps the Office of Athletics and the coordination of coaching and extracurricular club contracts running like a well-oiled machine. Kay Paulford is tasked with coordinating coaching and extracurricular contracts for AACPS. Contract specialists work with administrators, secretaries, and athletic departments at each of the 121 schools across the country to manage the county, to manage the more than 1,500 extracurricular club activity advisors and coaches. In doing so, Kay supports the school system by communicating guidelines, establishing and maintaining rosters, issuing season contracts, completing the verification process, and issuing payment to the advisors and coaches. Kay is extremely thorough, thoughtful, and organized in her approach to this work. She has managed transitions in software systems and protocol with a sense of detail and pride in doing the job perfectly. Additionally, Kay brings to her job an institutional knowledge base that is invaluable. When the Office of Athletics is often faced with questions about unique circumstances, Kay is always there to cite precedent and provide supporting documentation. After having retired from teaching PE for many years at Glen Burnie High School, Kay Pulford began working in the Office of Athletics over 11 years ago. Throughout her time, she has been a consistent presence, offering support and training to many others who have come through the office, remaining steadfast and diligent in ensuring all procedures are followed. Kay has a great sense of humor, a fun personality, and an ability to balance the behind-the-scenes detailed nature of her work with a sense of the overall picture of athletics in our county. Her work as a contract specialist impacts classrooms instruction by providing the necessary support to schools to offer a wide variety of after-school programs that keep students engaged in their educational process. AACPS would simply not be able to offer all of the athletic and extracurricular programs were it not for the hard work and dedication of this amazing employee. Those who have been working at the board for some time know Kay Pulford. She zips around the Parham building, working with many departments to connect the dots needed in order to get coaches and club advisors under contract throughout the county. Kay Pulford, you take professionalism to a new level, seeing the standard for your entire department. You work hard at building relationships, and it pays off. You go above and beyond, working late hours in the evening, early hours in the mornings, and on weekends to ensure all coaches and club advisors are under contract and receive payment in a timely fashion. So for these reasons and more, the Board of Education is honored to recognize you as Employee of the Month for May 2016. Congratulations. Please join me up front. Okay, Kay, what did they tell you to get over here?
I had to show up at the board meeting in order to support Clayton Clark in reference to contracts. To get
Okay. And who is here? Because you got a lot of applause
over here. Stand up, Clayton.
Thank you for bringing her over, Clayton. Now you have the bell to ring.
To ring it, keep them in line.
And keep them in line. Thank you very much for your service. Thank you very much.
And now we have Volunteer of the Month, Mrs. Burge.
Thank you. When an entire middle school science department nominates their star volunteer for our Volunteer of the Month award, we take notice. When their nomination is also endorsed by all 3 administrators and the special education department, we know this must be a serious contender. Today, the Board of Education is proud to join the grateful staff of Arundel Middle School to honor Mrs. Sandy Vogel as May's Volunteer of the Month. Mrs. Vogel, a devoted parent volunteer, has impacted the Arundel Middle School students, teachers, and community with her enthusiastic involvement for 3 years. For the past 2 years, Mrs. Vogel has been instrumental in Arundel Middle's effort to meet the school's goal to develop positive teacher, staff, and parent relationships. As the school's volunteer coordinator, she warmly recruits volunteers and coordinates schedules to ensure events are fully staffed and teachers' requests are fulfilled. In this role, Mrs. Vogel realized a need for an efficient system for classroom teachers to communicate their needs to volunteers, so she established one. When the staff learned that it was Mrs. Vogel who was organizing this project, they knew it was destined to be a success. As usual, she effectively delivered clear instructions for the new system to staff and volunteers and provided regular revision updates. As a result, more Arundel Middle School families know their involvement is welcomed and they share a greater connection to the school community. In addition to tackling large projects, Mrs. Vogel contributes countless hours each week to making copies, organizing classroom materials and lab equipment, or whatever tasks teachers request of her. They know they can depend on her to complete even the most mundane tasks with meticulous attention to detail. While her workload can be tedious and time-consuming, Mrs. Vogel always welcomes each opportunity to provide teachers with more time to focus on their students. As an active member of the Parent-Teacher Association and School Advisory Committee, Mrs. Vogel is a vital asset to the AMS family. She attends meetings and other in-school functions, participates in team-building activities, and even hosts summer staff parties at her house. The opinions and suggestions she shares from her parents' perspective are highly regarded and are a testament to how deeply the faculty and staff value their relationship with Mrs. Vogel. It is for all of these reasons that the faculty, staff, and administrators of Arundel Middle School wholeheartedly nominated Sandy Vogel for Volunteer of the Month Award. Thank you, Mrs. Sandy Vogel. Would you please come forward? With great appreciation, I would like to present this Volunteer of the Month certificate and bell to you. So, Sandy, how did we get you here today?
I was told I was listening to something about the science fair projects.
And of course you came.
And that I wouldn't have to talk. But I think they embellished a little bit.
About the not talking. I'm sure they didn't embellish on that application
they
at all.
probably did.
Now, I'm guessing that those are all things that you do, but it sounds good when it's all put together, doesn't it?
It does, it's a little,
But thank you very much. You do wonderful things for the kids at your school, and we really do appreciate everything that you do. So who tricked you into coming here today?
Zachary Jones.
Okay, Mr. Jones. All right, she's going to get you back at some point.
Yes.
You know that, right?
He knows.
But thank you very much for all that you do. Here is a certificate and a bell for you, so you can call them.
I'll bring it on Tuesdays.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you so much, and congratulations.
Thank you.
And we'll take some pictures of the Educator, Employee, and Volunteer of the Month after our break, or during our break. Item 2.09, School and Community Highlights. Mrs. Nally?
Well, on Saturday, the Board of Education, with the Chesapeake Bay Foundation, had a wonderful environmental retreat. We spent the morning hearing from students and schools in our county and the impact that environmental education has in our county. Across all 80,000 students have environmental education integrated into the curriculum, and the students themselves were it was just so great to hear the impact they've had in their communities and how they've really realized through this program that they can make a difference. So it was great. The afternoon, we spent on the skipjack doing activities that the students actually have an opportunity to do. So it was wonderful, and I want to thank Chesapeake Bay Foundation, and I want to hope in the future we're going to have some of the students come in and really share publicly what all is being done in environmental education in our county. We are a lead in the state and indeed in the nation for our environmental education program, and I want to thank all that contribute to this. Thank you.
Mr. Horskamp?
Thank you. So last week I had the wonderful opportunity to participate in the first annual NCHS College Signing Day. We had students from the senior class of 2016 sat at a table with their college colors and their gear and spoke to the underclassmen about why they chose that college, what their major is, and just everything about the perks of going to college. We also had a guest representative from the White House to speak to us about paying for college, why college is a great opportunity to go to, and how we should utilize it once we grow into the workforce, because not many students have the same opportunity for us to get the funding and everything. But a number of my friends will be going to the wonderful Maryland schools, Towson, Frostburg, University of Maryland, College Park. A few of my friends are going to MIT, University of Pennsylvania, Harvard, and Yale. I like to announce that I will be moving to the United Kingdom to study international relations at the University of Birmingham. I just want to thank Miss Julie Karras, she's right out there in the back, for planning all this. She was really excited to get this finally going, and I'd love to hear how it goes next year. Thank you, Ms. Karras.
Mrs. Summer?
Yes, after the last meeting, Ms. Pickard and I were able to go to Phoenix Academy for a presentation from the Rotary Club of Parole, who have donated $80,000 to Phoenix Academy to build a greenhouse that will expand their programs that deals with, oh, I forget the name of the program. What is it? agriculture. There we go. There's my word. Agriculture and things. And if you've never been to Phoenix, it's really an amazing place, and it's such a supportive environment. And this greenhouse is going to give so much more to the students as they work there to have it. And so we're so grateful for partners like the Rotary Parole that have stepped in and adopted some of our schools and helped us with that. I also went to Meade High School for the International Baccalaureate Middle Years Program Personal Projects Showcase. If you ever have a chance to go to one of our IB schools and see those programs, it is just amazing what these kids do. They each get to pick their own thing that they're passionate about, and the variety of topics that they choose and that they research, from extended genealogy projects to an anti-bullying campaign to a girl planned her funeral. So there was, I mean, when I say there was a wide range, but they were just fascinating, and it's such a great example of the IB program and how in-depth students are done, and the personal growth that's pushed for them to have that. We also had the great opportunity to tour Arnold Elementary School with Interim State Superintendent Jack Smith to recognize Arnold as one of our blue ribbon schools, one of only a very few in the state. And I want to thank Principal Shauna Kaufman, because that was a great day to see everything that's going on there. And their Terrapin mascot that came out to celebrate, he was the hit. The free cookies were more exciting. Cookies from Mrs. Fields were much more exciting to the kids than any of the other awards that came, but it was a great day, and they're doing great things at Arnold. And I just want to echo what Ms. Nally said, that we had a great day with our literacy retreat. Also, all the Arlington Echo folks were here at the board offices on Earth Day and had a great presentation out there to show everything that's going on. And as she said, our county is just a leader in the nation when it comes to environmental literacy, as evidenced by the fact that Broadneck High School was just named a green ribbon school, a national award that only a very few schools get. And so big congratulations to Broadneck and all of our environmental literacy team for all that they do.
Dr. Arlotto.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Nally, Ms. Hummer, for recognizing and talking about the wonderful Saturday morning we had with you all in talking about environmental literacy. We're very proud that Broadneck has been named a National Green Ribbon School for Environmental Literacy and Sustainability. But if I could take that one step further, and I think Ms. Nally mentioned, I recently received a letter from John King, who's the Secretary of Education, and he wrote saying, "Dear Dr. Arlotto, congratulations on being recognized as a 2016 U.S. Department of Education Green Ribbon School District Sustainability Award. This award acknowledges your district's achievements in taking a comprehensive approach to sustainability." He went on to say, "I commend you for your commitment to environmental stewardship, health, and sustainability, and for inspiring your entire district to aim high. You are representative of promising practices that improve achievement and equity, not only for aspiring green districts, for all districts. I look forward to celebrating your accomplishments during the U.S. Department of Education's Green Ribbon Schools recognition on July 20th in Washington, D.C. this upcoming summer." And so it is very timely that we were able to have our environmental retreat with the board, review the wonderful things that are happening, and to say thank you to Lisa Seaman Crawford, who's here, and Melanie Parker, along with Michelle Batt and Mary Tallar and many others. This is a joint effort. I thank you. It is a focus for us and will continue to be a focus for us. So thank you.
I just want to echo all of the things that we've mentioned, and also add that my board members and I have been out and about attending town halls and budget meetings so far with the county executive, advocating on behalf of all of you for the budget that we've put forward. So we're going to keep up the advocacy with you all. Mrs. Hummer?
One thing I forgot, we all attended the Excellence in Education Awards, and Katrina Griffin from North County High School is named the County Teacher of the Year, and will go on and compete for the state honors as well. So hats off to all the finalists, all the nominees, and especially to Katrina Griffin and all the folks who work with her at North County.
Item 2.10 is the CAC report.
Good morning, Dr. Arlotto, President Korbelak, and members of the board. I'm Karma O'Neill, the current chair of the CAC. The CAC has been diligently working on completing all of our committee reports, and we'll have a full report to present to you in June. Some highlights include recommendations from the Communication Committee to create a system-wide calendar of meetings and events, an evaluation of needed school supplies and student fees, a push towards seeking national grants for help with our park testing and all of the things that are going on in our schools with park testing, achieving standardization of retake and retest policy, and expanding the community ambassador program to serve more parts of our community. I'm really proud and in awe of the work that our committees have done these past 8 months. Members have spent countless hours researching, analyzing, and compiling data, and I think you're going to be wowed by the details and thoughtfulness of the reports. On another note, we have several members who will be completing their term in June, and a press release has gone out advertising their open seats. I would like to publicly thank those members that are leaving: Judith Keeler, Stephen Riley, Sherry Howard, Marcia Turner, Jennifer Bryant, Latoya Staten, Pamela Murray, Maria Dominguez, Lisa Short, and Kathy Flaherty for their commitment to CAC and to our students. Last, on May 2nd, the CAC elected officers for our 2016-17 school year, and congratulations to Melanie Teichert, who've joined us today. She'll be the new chair. Kelly Purnell, vice chair, and Greg Novak will be our secretary. Thank you very much.
Thank you to Karma for all your service as chair these past couple years. Item 2.11 is the International Parent Community Advisory Report.
Dr. Arlotto, President Korbelak, members of the board, good morning. I gotta take a deep breath. My name is Arnalyn Tupasetzer, and I'm representing the International Parent and Community Advisory Board, or IPCAB. It's long. The primary purpose of our group is to advise the superintendent and you, the Board of Education, on issues that are relevant to international families here in AACPS. It has been such an enriching experience to meet with like-minded parents who, despite our diverse backgrounds, all share the same goal in growing highly educated, global-minded young people. We recently met with board member Maria Sasso and are pleased to have this opportunity to provide a similar update to the rest of the board and to Dr. Arlotto. This is our group's fifth such report. Our group is comprised of representatives from each of the major international communities here in Anne Arundel County, as well as 2 representatives from the ESOL department, a bilingual facilitator, and a member from the county's Human Relations Commission. Most of our members are graduates of the International Parent Community Leadership Academy, like these folks behind me. Although we may come from a wide array of ethnic and socioeconomic backgrounds, our group is united in our commitment to assisting AACPS with fostering great schools, nurturing great kids, and building a great global community. By capitalizing on our own international experiences, we strive to give vital input that will enable AACPS to further elevate all students and eliminate all gaps. Our meetings begin with updates from each international community. Members serve as liaisons from their respective international communities to the school system and vice versa. Each community has different needs and concerns, and Laura Gardner of the School and Family Partnerships is able to help clarify questions and concerns or direct us to the department that could help answer those concerns. For example, one of our Chinese reps recently discussed questions her community had about park assessment. She was connected with the testing office and able to relay important information back to her community. Our group only met 4 times this year, and we continue to work on 4 primary goals. Our first major goal is to help AACPS recruit more diverse staff. In the fall, we met with the Director of Workforce Diversity and shared our online directory of contacts along with suggestions on how HR recruit staff might better access potential candidates from each of the international communities. For example, there's a county-wide Hispanic listserv that we shared with HR, and to increase access to the Hispanic community, this was very helpful. We also raised awareness on opportunities for recruitment, such as our county-wide Hispanic Women's Day. Our second major goal, and it's ongoing, is to help AACPS with increasing the global mindedness and cultural proficiency in our schools. This year, we met with the social studies and IB coordinators to learn how we could assist the EEE and IB programs. We shared ideas on how each of the programs could partner with the international communities to offer a more authentic learning opportunity for all of our students. As a result of these conversations, many of us have been involved in various collaborations throughout the year. Such examples are our West African representative went and spoke with the IB students at MacArthur Middle. Both of our Filipino representatives invited college students from UMD's Filipino Cultural Association and a dance company to participate in the IB Winterfest. Our Chinese representative partnered with the IB program at Old Mill Middle North and organized a highly successful and well-attended Mid-Autumn Moon Festival. The students there were learning Mandarin, and so they were able to interact with the Chinese community and experienced a very unique traditional practices. Incidentally, that representative, Ms. Chen, is also this year's candidate to the MSDE Parent Involvement Matters Award, so we're very proud of her. Lastly, some of us spoke to a group of 25 teachers in a 5-week cultural immersion professional development facilitated by Laura Gardner of the School and Family Partnerships. Our Hispanic representative shared with this group of teachers about the school system in El Salvador and her personal journey to the U.S. In addition to these two main goals, we continue to help with each year's International Parent and Community Leadership Academy to help grow more international parent leaders. Several of our reps spoke to this year's class, and many of us will continue meeting with these graduates that you see here today to assist them with their projects. Lastly, we continue to engage with the budget process and educate other international parents about it so they too have an opportunity to share their voice. Specifically, we continue to advocate for more bilingual facilitators, ESOL teachers, and other positions that will help the international communities. As you know, we will never be able to elevate our children or eliminate all gaps if we can't even communicate with the parents. In closing, with a growing number of international families joining our school system, our group strongly believes that this is a crucial time in firming up the foundations for a more collaborative and interconnected network of communities, programs, resources, and initiatives. Our number one aim is to connect AACPS with the different international communities around the county. We hope that by doing so, we will help the newest members of our community feel more welcome, as well as empower the more established family members of our community to become more active participants. The voices of international parents have often been underrepresented in traditional parent involvement activities in the school system, and we hope to change this paradigm. The International Parents and Community Advisor Board is committed to aiding you here at AACPS in raising healthy, well-adjusted young people, equipped with the skills and mindset of progressive global citizens. We look forward to reporting to you about our initiatives in the future and would like to end with an invitation. Similar to Citizens Advisory Board, or CAC, we would like to formally invite a board member to attend each of our meetings next year. We feel that this will bolster our group's effectivity in communicating with you, as well as build further awareness of our projects, goals, and unique slant on pertinent issues that our schools face. We're looking forward to working alongside all of you next year, and thank you. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you. We're now going to take a break for photos, and we'll be back for public comment. We'll now move on to the public comment portion of the meeting. Anyone wishing to speak on an item not on today's agenda may offer testimony during this public comment portion. Speakers will be allotted 3 minutes each, and the board asks that comments remain civil and appropriate for the various audiences that may be watching or viewing the meeting. Student-specific and personnel matters are confidential and cannot be discussed in this forum. This time is intended for speakers to voice their opinion and not necessarily as a question and answer period. Speakers may pose questions, but answers will be counted toward the 3-minute allotment. For the record, please give your name before speaking, and handouts should be given to the board assistant. I have 3 cards: Lisa Van Buskirk, Claudia O'Keefe, and Monique Willard.
Good morning, Dr. Arlotto and members of the board. I'm Lisa Van Buskirk from Edgewater. I'm not going to talk so much about start times specifically, other than to update you that Howard County's Board of Education voted last week to move their start times in 2017-2018 school year. Still have to pick out how they're going to do that, but other counties in Maryland are also moving in our direction. Today I'm going to focus on special needs transportation because the testimony from last meeting from the CCAC crystallized some things for me. The $602,000 already in this year's budget was intended to decouple some of the special needs and non-public placement routes from the rest of the bus tiers, which in turn was to allow healthier school hours. The additional buses would complete routes such as the ones that go to Harbor School and arrive 20 minutes before the students are allowed off the bus, so that that bus can be first in line to discharge its passengers and then head out on its other routes. While this is an efficient reuse of that bus for multiple tiers, it comes at the expense of the special needs students on that bus. There also appears to be some excess capacity on many special needs buses. I see St. Mary's County very small buses deliver the few students it carries to Summit School in Edgewater every morning. The smallest Anne Arundel County buses appear to be about twice as big and often with just as few students on it. Surely the smaller bus from St. Mary's is less expensive than Anne Arundel's larger versions. Could more than 10 buses be purchased, maximizing money available, if Anne Arundel considered the smaller versions for some of its routes? I know the argument is that the large Type 1 buses are safer, but how are the big buses any safer when they must maneuver into small parking lots via awkward turns and crossing Route 1 traffic into the High Road Academy in Laurel? I would argue that it also ought not to take an hour for the Baltimore Lab bus to drop off 3 students between BWI and Crofton, or pick up the Crofton student at 5:50 in the morning, 2 hours before Baltimore Lab's doors open for class that starts like 20 minutes later. Or the 2-hour bus ride from Shadyside to Ellicott City, to Linwood Center in Ellicott City. Could out-of-the-box thinking help improve some of these routes? Because unlike magnet schools, these bus rides are not particularly optional for these students. The Code of Maryland allows for single-rider taxis, and Summit School actually subcontracts to a company, Kidsportation, to transport students in passenger vans, including some Anne Arundel non-public placements. Why does AACPS not utilize these kinds of available services more often for some of its unique special needs bus routes? Surely responsible drivers can be hired by companies like Crofton Couriers or Kidsportation, who meet the requirements of the Maryland Public Service Commission for taxi drivers without the need for CDL licenses, increasing the pool of available employees in the bus shortage that we have now. It's my understanding from speaking with Leon Langley at MSDE and Linda Bluth, formerly of MSDE, that it's up to each jurisdiction to determine what constitutes safe operations for special needs transportation. Maryland counties use a wide variety of transportation solutions for their unique circumstances. Anne Arundel need not stick to its status quo for transportation services if other safe methods of transportation are available. As for timing, bus routes for special needs children constantly change as IEPs and placements change. You could institute this now, start the contracts even with the 10 buses, and be able to implement it mid-year and only impact a small number of students. And then we will continue to address the school start time issue. So the County Council gave you $600,000 in good faith. Let's not delay its use any further. Thank you.
Hello, my name's Claudia O'Keefe in the Old Mill School District. I just wanted to provide some information. I know several of you are new on the board, and at the previous board meeting, options were presented for what you can do under current funding to delay school start times. And the question arose, what good is 15 or 18 minutes going to do? So I've got an article here. I brought copies if you would like to see them. And this is an older study, but I just want to read one quick paragraph from it. Okay, every study done shows a similar connection between sleep and school grades, from a study of second and third graders to a study of eighth graders. Correlations really spike in high school because that's where there's a steep drop-off in kids' sleep. Dr. Kyla Wallstrom of the University of Minnesota surveyed more than 7,000 high schoolers in Minnesota about their sleep habits and grades. Teens who received A's averaged about 15 minutes more sleep than the B students, who in turn averaged 11 more minutes than the C's, and the C's had 10 more minutes than the D's. Wallstrom's data was an almost perfect replication of results from an earlier study of more than 3,000 Rhode Island high schoolers by Brown University's Mary Karskeden. Certainly these are averages, but the consistency of the two studies stands out. Every 15 minutes counts. 15 minutes is equivalent to a whole letter grade change for the students. So I've got the articles if you'd like to see them. Okay. So I know that you're busy doing a lot of things right now, but if you could please take that into consideration. You've already gotten the funding, you can already do it, and as you can see, it's a very big help. Thank you.
Good morning, Dr. Arlotto, members of the board. I want to say thanks to Dr. Arlotto, Mr. Alston, and Ms. Cares for meeting with the concerned parents and students, as well as community members on yesterday evening regarding the issues taking place at North County High School. I implore Anne Arundel County Public School leadership to strongly consider the recommendations that were discussed last evening. Just to recap a bit, we are looking for the true enforcement and intentional and deliberate, to be intentional and deliberate around the bias-motivated behavior policy. Leadership needs to denounce and enforce that particular policy. We're looking for an increase in the number of community ambassadors, as it was noted earlier today from CAC, the Citizens Advisory Committee. We're also looking for Anne Arundel County Public Schools to provide race relations and cultural sensitivity training to all of your students and faculty. Again, you've got the Academy, Leadership, International, Parent Board. You can, of course, use them for a piece of that. You have the resources here. We need you to take action. The time is now. We need to be the example. We can be the example around environmental. We need to be the example to show students who live in the environment as to how we can all coexist. This can be a collaborative effort. Again, we had students present last night, parents, their civic organizations. I've talked to Mr. Alston. You have several civic organizations within Anne Arundel County that are quite diverse. They're willing to do their part in this process. My sorority, Delta Sigma Theta, is present at North County High School. We've been present at Meade High School. We've been present at Van Bachlen Elementary School. We need to do something, and the time is now. I do not have a child in Anne Arundel County Public Schools. I'm a graduate of Anne Arundel County. I'm a graduate of University of Maryland for undergrad and graduate. I'm taking my time. Why? Because I care. This is a school system that I grew up in, and I expect to see some change because it feels like nothing different from when I graduated in '89 from South River High School. This must change. The time is now. You're in position to do it. Let's make it happen.
I don't have any additional cards. Is there anyone else who would like to address the board at this time? All right, we'll move on to action items. Item 4.01, administrative personnel appointments. Dr. Arlotto, your recommendation.
Yes, ma'am. I recommend that the personnel listed on the attached sheet be promoted and or appointed.
So moved.
All those in favor? Motion passes 900. Item 4.02, personnel. Dr. Arlotto, your recommendation.
Yes, ma'am. I recommend that the board approve the actions as stipulated on the attached sheets.
So moved.
Second.
Mrs. Hummer?
I was looking at this list last night, and it has a list of some of our retirees for this year. We have 19 retirees with nearly 500 years of teaching experience among them. That's just incredible. That's just floors me. The average length of service for these retirees was over 26 years each. And I'm going to holler out specifically to Mr. Banks, who teaches art at Arundel Middle School for 43 years. Ms. Balderson, music at Broadneck High School, 38 years. And Mr. Herrick at Broadneck High School, PE, 37.5 years. That's just awesome. So thank you all to all the retirees for all your service for so many decades, for the 500 years you've served children.
Item 4.03 is a first reading on, oh, I'm sorry, we do. All those in favor?
If we hadn't voted, they couldn't have retired.
That's true.
For another 500 years.
Motion passes 900. Item 4.03 is an information item, Professional Improvement Employees Policy GBM, first reading.
Good morning, Jessica Kutches, Policy and Legislative Counsel. The Division of Professional Growth and Development and the Division of Human Resources bring policy GBM to you for first reading. The policy was last updated November 7th, 1990. The updated policy and the new regulation recognize the importance of continuing education coursework and position-related training intended to meet the specific professional improvement needs of staff. The policy will be posted on our website for 30 days for public comment, and we will answer any questions, or I will answer any questions you have at this time.
Mrs. Birch.
So prior to these proposed changes, was there not any policy or regulation dealing with professional development for anyone besides teachers?
That's correct.
Oh.
So we added, it was at that, as you can see from the old language, it was, the old title was Professional Development Teachers. And given that the focus is on all staff, we wanted to ensure that our policy reflected that value.
Okay, I wasn't sure if we were folding in another policy or, okay, all right, great, good job.
Is there any public comment on this item? Okay, so this will go on the web for public comment.
That's correct.
Item 4.04, new course approval. This is an information to action item. Do I have a motion to move this from information to action?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor? We now have an action item. Dr. Arlato, your recommendation.
Yes, ma'am. I recommend approval of this course for the 2016-2017 school year.
Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Mrs. Hummer.
Okay, I just want to say that this course sounds really cool, and my kids will love this. Is this going to be available at all schools? Is this being approved for all schools or for specific programs?
Good morning. For the record, my name is Skip Lee. I'm the Director of Curriculum. At this time, the course has been approved for Chesapeake and Northeast. It's a we don't like to use the word pilot year, but we do need to work out how the course is going to be administered and the platform over which it's going to be utilized. I'd like to also defer to Stephanie Kelly from the Office of Instructional Technology.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Kelly from the Office of Instructional Technology, and it actually will be at Arundel and Northeast.
I beg your pardon.
Yes, thank you.
It's amazing.
Yes, we're very excited.
Is there any public comment on this item? All those in favor? Motion passes 900.
Thank you.
Item 4.05 is the food and nutrition services pricing for the 2016-17 school year. This is an information to action item. Do I have a motion to move it from information to action?
Second.
All those in favor? We now have an action item. Dr. Arlato, your recommendation.
Yes, ma'am. I recommend no increase in the food and nutrition services pricing for the 2016-2017 school year.
Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Everybody's asleep today. Okay. Any board questions? Mrs. Hummer.
The different kinds of meals that we offer, could you just tell me real quickly what they are? Maryland Meals for Achievement, Breakfast with Class, Second Chance Breakfast. What's the difference between the different meals?
I sure can. Good morning. For the record, Jody Rissy, Supervisor of Food and Nutrition Services. The Maryland Meals for Achievement is a free breakfast program in the classroom. So if it's offered in 47 of our schools, the breakfast meals are delivered to the classroom, so the class eats together, regardless of your eligibility status, paid free or reduced, everybody eats free. We also have the teachers eat with them, so they exhibit the role modeling and the benefits of breakfast. Breakfast with class is also in the classroom, but the students proceed through our serving line and they pay their appropriate amount, paid free or reduced. They then go to the classroom and eat together in a community setting. Second Chance Breakfast is in 3 of our high schools. What we do is we open in the morning and we provide breakfast for those who are interested. We then again open after first period and we do kiosks throughout the school and we let them do breakfast at a later point. And then they also take that to their classrooms. So the evidence shows, and I think the statistics show, that when it's in the classroom, more students eat, they're ready to learn, and they're there ready for instruction.
And all these programs are done in concert with the Maryland State Department of Education and Department of Agriculture, so it's a combined effort and supported both financially and programmatically by both the state and federal government.
Mrs. Birch.
2 questions. First, which high schools do the Second Chance Breakfast?
It is Northeast High School, oh my gosh.
I'm sorry.
Northeast, Glen Burnie, and Arundel High School.
Okay. Second question. I know that a lot of our decisions on whether or not we're going to raise rates have to do with what our fund balance is for the food and nutrition program, because it is self-funding. We don't put any of our general funds into the program. So I want to know about the health of the fund balance, and I know we usually want at least, a month or 2 worth of funds in it so that we can pay for the food that we need to buy so that we can have the food before we need to feed the children.
Our operational practices in food and nutrition services is between 2 to 3 months of essentially claims paying ability. We will end FY16, the current year, within that parameter, and we are projected to end FY17 again within that parameter, even if you maintain prices stable. So we will not be falling outside of the range that the board policy and budget committee have guided us towards.
So how is it that increasing food costs aren't affecting us in the same way that they're affecting my house?
Well, I think we have a fantastic team. So support from you all, obviously, first and foremost, but we have a great team out there, and we continue to look at ways to really enhance our service and provide the best food that we could, and outside the traditional school day. So we do dinner programs, and we serve meals in a school on Christmas Day. We do Saturdays. So as we continue to grow, it obviously just the economies of scales helps us what we do.
Okay.
But we have a great team.
That's true. I also want to mention I love the summer meals program. I think that's a fabulous thing. I just found out that my kids are going to be going for a couple weeks to Quiet Waters, and I think they're getting lunch while they're at Quiet Waters.
That is correct. So we partner with Recreation and Parks in many of their facilities over the summer, and we're able to provide, based on the location, free summer meals. So Quiet Waters has been in the program for many years with us.
Mrs. Pickard.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I just have to say that my day spent with Ms. Reese, my mic's on, in February was one of my top favorite days as a board member, and I would encourage all board members and certainly new board members to take some time to understand how we deliver meals and other food services to the students of Anne Arundel County and families in the summer. So maybe that skipjack trip could turn into a next year a little orientation with our food service, because they do a fantastic job. And you will not only learn about what we do with food service, but you will also learn about the communities we serve and the population that lives in this county. So thank you.
Mr. Gilliland.
Thank you. And Mrs. Pickard just stole what I was going to say, because we had a conversation and she recommended that I spend some time with you, and I'd love to do that. Look forward to arranging that. My one question, and it's just a quick question now, but I'd love to delve more deeply later. At the end of the day, what happens to the cooked food that can't be reused?
It's limited, what we have left over, so we forecast and we project what we're going to serve each and every day. So every school has a kitchen, and they cook accordingly to their anticipated amount of customers that we're going to have. So I don't know, there could be 10, 20 leftover servings. If it's something that's fresh and still of value, it can be served the next day according to our COMAR regulations. If it is not, it is discarded at that time. But it is very low, it's very limited in our county. Some schools also do share tables, so if there was something that went out into the cafeteria and it was left over, a student who's still hungry can capitalize on that share table.
That's what I was going to ask. Thank you.
Mr. Horskamp.
Thank you. Jody, I just want to say thank you for all your hard work. I know you spoke to the middle and high school students of Anne Arundel County this past fall through a workshop, and the students really appreciated what you presented them and how we understand how food works in this county, and especially in the school district. I just want to say thank you so much again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any public comment on this item? All those in favor? Motion passes 900. Next, we have 4 educational specifications. I'd like to bundle 4.06 through 4.09 to have a motion to bundle and move those 4 from information to action.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor? We now have an action item. Dr. Arlato, your recommendation.
Yes, ma'am. I recommend approval of the educational specifications for Edgewater Elementary, Tyler Heights Elementary, Richard Henry Lee Elementary, as well as the Crofton Area High School.
Second. Okay. Mrs. Hummer.
Could you clarify, so looking through for the ed specs, so for instance, looking at the one for Edgewater, and it says with it, the new construction will be 87,502 square feet, and then 50,080 of it is eligible for state funding. How is it determined how much is eligible for state funding and how much is not? Because I know that's consistent across all of the construction projects.
Sure. The state has a very prescriptive algorithm for what is ineligible. But one of the big matters is involved with surrounding neighborhood schools as well. So there's deducts. So for example, if the adjoining school had space for 10 more students, they say those 10 students very readily could just simply move to the adjoining school. So they say those 10 students are worth this many square feet, and we take that away. So it's a very complicated balancing act, but it's a uniform application, so they have a regimented way to tabulate that, and all 24 jurisdictions adhere to that exact same set of guidelines. So that's part of it. Another very good example is, as you know, we have a very robust partnership with Anne Arundel County Recreation and Parks. And the state will support up to 3,000 square feet of community use space shared between the school and the community. But because of the lack or the shortage of gym space, for example, and also before and after care, like our SAC program, we actually wind up building, in partnership with the county government, supported by them financially and directly with Rec and Parks, we wind up building more square footage than the 3,000. So again, every square foot we build in partnership with Rec and Parks in excess of the 3,000 is also deemed ineligible. So there's many, many of these examples, and they add up kind of to the bottom line. But again, I do want to stress that it is a very uniform methodology, and it doesn't matter if you're in Garrett or Somerset or Anne Arundel. The same exact set of prescriptive criteria are applied statewide.
I have a question about some of the school sizes. Tyler Heights Elementary would be 654 students. Given that we're getting ready to open a contract school in the Annapolis area, is that still an appropriate size for that particular elementary school?
Well, I think we've got a couple issues. One, we don't really know how the whole contract school is going to play out because it's going to be a lottery for the entire Annapolis feeder district, and that lottery won't really transpire to a year from now. So there might be an opportunity later on, once we get into the design phase, to make some adjustments. But Annapolis is still a growing area, as you see the turnover rate. So they're continuing to aggregate more youngsters into that feeder pattern. So while the contracts will clearly help, it will help the Annapolis feeder system in its totality, specifically how it will apply to Tyler. And because it's going to be a lottery each and every year, we sort of have to make sure that we are planned properly to absorb whatever the maximum impact is. I think once we get some real-time data and actually know how that plays out a little bit better, we may be able to fine-tune this slightly.
So we could reduce the size of the school in the design phase if we wanted to go there.
Potentially. I think that much like our budgetary process, we operate what's called an encumbrance-based budget, which essentially is the high water mark, worst case scenario. So we want the fiscal authorities, we want the state planning authorities, et cetera, to grant us approvals at that high water mark. Nobody yells at you if you bring a job in a little bit cheaper. Nobody yells at you if you bring a job in a little bit sooner. And if they approve it at that high water mark, if we can make the case that we can shrink the size of the building, I'm sure the county funding officials would love to not have to pay for that additional square footage, and the state Department of Education and Planning, I'm sure, again, based on data, would concur with us to reduce it. It's much easier to reduce a project scope as it is to increase it after the fact.
So similarly, Crofton High School 4.09 is going to be 1,696 state-rated capacity. And at the budget address on May 9th, Mr. Hsu, County Executive Hsu, was saying that we had the highest average high school capacity in the state at 1,700. So if we're trying to help him move to smaller schools, building a 654-seat elementary school and a 1,696-seat high school seems to be inconsistent with his goal.
We're actually on a trajectory to have about a 1,900 average size high school, so 1,696 is going to be below 1,900, so it actually will bring the average down, but just modestly.
But he was advocating for moving to something more like a Howard County model where it was about 1,400 students.
Unfortunately, I think really at the end of the day, a school has to fit the community. And so Crofton is a planned development community, and it would be very hard-pressed to figure out which of Crofton's 5 elementary schools would not go to the high school that's a mere 2 or 3 miles away from their elementary school. So while on a policy statement that may be desirable, the application, I think, has to be uniquely tailored. If you remember, the state of Maryland came out through a study that they did with sort of the optimal, on a planning basis, an optimal size of a high school of 1,600. Our MGT study said 1,700, so 1,696 kind of fits right between those things. But optimal was really a planning tool, right? So that's a desired state. You may not be able to hit that in each and every case. Similarly, we've got schools like Northeast or Southern that are much smaller, and we would never want to build a school of 1,600 or 1,700 kids in that community because simply the demography would never justify that. So it's sort of the right fit, right time, right climate opportunity.
Okay. Mrs. Hummer?
The specs for the Crofton High School says that there were updates to our standard high school specs to changes that the Department of Instruction were looking for. I know there's probably thousands of them that are changes uniquely for that school, but could you maybe address what are some bigger things that we're tailoring specifically for that high school?
For the record, Mary Patz, architect in the design office at facilities. Some of the, as we developed the Crofton area high school ed spec, I met with the associate superintendent, assistant superintendents to talk about the 21st century classroom and to talk about, as well as looking at recent high schools that we've completed, Northeast High School and, of course, Severna Park High School that's under construction now. So part of the exercise in developing this ed spec was to kind of take lessons learned from those schools and also incorporate what I learned from the curriculum instruction folks in this building too. So specifically, would you like examples of specific rooms or spaces that have changed? Or yeah, sure. Okay, one example was the flex classroom. We're providing 3 oversized classrooms within the general classroom wing. And these classrooms they'll look a little different from a regular classroom. They won't necessarily have a teacher that's ensconced there at all times. But when I spoke to both Dr. Kubik and Dr. McMahon about this type of room, they envision these rooms as being flexible learning spaces, carpeted. We'd have, so that we could have computer access throughout the rooms. We may have large screen TVs in these rooms, interactive whiteboards. I think these are types of rooms that would allow for larger groups of students to work together in a collaborative way, flexible furniture, and they're sort of envisioning these as the classrooms of the future. So our intent is, at the moment, our intent is to kind of locate one of these rooms in each of the discipline areas. So one in the English wing, one in the social studies wing, one in the math area. That was one change. The basic rooms themselves are very similar to what we have done in our other schools before. I did go through and we evaluated exactly how big the gym needs to be to accommodate a student body of 1696 versus Severna Park High School, which is accommodating a student body of 2100. So we made adjustments in those ways. And I was able to meet with the coordinators of athletics and PE to kind of tailor exactly what we're going to, what have we learned at Northeast? What have we learned at Severna Park? How do we need to make these gyms work, this new gym work for us appropriately, team rooms and so forth. So there probably are not any major changes to curriculum spaces other than kind of taking what we've always done and tailoring it to what's coming up in the future.
Mrs. Pickard.
Yes. Just to get back to the school size, I had the pleasure of, if you call it that, of sitting in on the conference call with the consultants that created the school size report. And really, our schools, I guess it depends on how you want to interpret that data that they collected. Our high school size is actually spot on, right in the middle of what they feel is optimal for achievement and economies of scale and everything else. So from what I remember hearing, and I was trying to find it for proof, but between 1,600 and 2,400 were actually what those consultants came out in that report. The report was actually quite inconclusive of appropriate school size, and certainly Crofton High School needs to be 1,700 students. Otherwise, it'll be over capacity upon opening its doors. That's all I want to say.
Is there any public comment on these items? All those in favor? Motion passes 900. Item 4.10 is the Pasadena Elementary School Deed of Easement to Anne Arundel County, Maryland. It's an information to action item. Do I have a motion to move this from information to action?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor? We now have an action item. Dr. Arlato, your recommendation.
Yes, ma'am. I recommend approval of the Pasadena Elementary School Deed of Easement to Anne Arundel County, Maryland.
So moved. Second.
Any questions or comments from the board? Any public comment? All those in favor? Motion passes 900.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming up. We now have some review items. 5.01, the county executive's recommended FY 2017 operating and capital budgets.
Good morning. For the record, Alex Shacknose, Chief Operating Officer, if you allow us to introduce ourselves at the beginning here.
Matt Stansky, Director of Financial Operations.
Lisa Seaman Crawford, Director of Facilities.
So just this week on Monday, May the 2nd, the county executive released his recommended operating and capital budgets for not only the Board of Education, but the other component units of the county, as well as the general county government as well. So what we intend to do this morning is to give you a highlight of the operating budget first, and probably pause there and allow the board to have any questions that may have relative to that, and then we'll sort of transition to the capital budget and give you again an overview and an opportunity for questions and answers. So with respect to the operating budget, we always begin with the revenue side of the picture, and it's the exhibit is as depicted on the screens in front of you and behind you. So on the revenue side, the federal government, the county executive's budget matches the board's request in the arena of the federal government revenue. It matches the board's request exactly on the state revenue side, so $14.9 million from the state government. It does alter then in the next category, county, and I'll elaborate on that a little bit. The board had, in its adopted budget back in February, requested approximately $36.2 million of revenue. In the county executive's budget release in county revenue, he's recommended $11.3 million directly split accordingly. So $6.2 million of that $11.3 million is what we classically refer to as maintenance of effort. In addition to that, there's approximately $4.9 million that's above maintenance of effort. And then finally, there's $221,000 worth of non-recurring costs that are tied to the implementation of the EEE initiatives at both the Northeast and the Chesapeake High School complex, or feeder systems. Going down, we had requested $154,000 increase in the local contribution and a $500,000 increase in the fund balance contribution, both concurred with. On the restricted side of the budget, both the restricted grants, the internal service fund for healthcare, and the food service revenue accounts, the county executive's recommendations matched again with the board. There is, however, a new category of non-recurring costs that was approved recently by the Maryland State Department of Education via their non-recurring cost waiver process to allow the county government to provide $10 million of one-time funds that would go into the healthcare reserve fund. So in totality, there's just under $34.8 million of revenue year over year, FY17 over FY16. Then switching over to the expense side and just hitting some of the highlights, you'll see that the county executive's recommendation does fully fund the board's requests in terms of compensation placeholders, which essentially is equivalent to a full step for all eligible employees, or a step equivalent for non-represented units. Naturally, that's all subject to the negotiated agreements and the outcomes of those negotiations. But again, it's a compensation placeholder. Of the $20 million request for healthcare, I spoke earlier that was not funded directly on the revenue side. In lieu of that was the $10 million one-time infusion into the non-recurring reserve fund explicitly targeted for healthcare. The next line item is one that might be of interest to the board. We had received notice that essentially we would be obligated to pay about $2.6 million in excess retirement costs attributable to the shift of the teacher retirement costs over to the localities. If you remember, that shift actually begun back in approximately the 2012 timeline, and there was a multi-year phased-in approach that concluded in 2016, and in 2017 there was going to be a mathematical true-up. Well, this is that mathematical true-up. Essentially, the expenses were slightly higher than revenue estimates, so Actuarially, we owe the state approximately $2.6 million. And the reason I'm taking the liberty of discussing this item is, as you recall, this past session, the General Assembly took some actions to help localities, the 24 localities, pay and absorb some of this, and approximately $1.9 million was set aside within the state's adopted budget for the purpose of helping localities address the teacher component of the pension shift. That, however, does require the direct action of the governor to release those dollars. To date, that has not occurred, so we have to essentially budget and operate as if we are responsible for that. The county government does concur, so that $2.6 million will fully meet that state obligation. Should the governor at some point in time release the $1.9 million at a later junction, we'll address that independently. The next line item, you'll see we had asked about $1.9 million in terms of other fixed charges for FICA, workers' comp, unemployment claims. Again, those are actuarially calculated. We receive those numbers from the county government because we're self-insured essentially, but under their plan. So when the county recomputed, again, based on loss experience, based on claims information that we received from the state of Maryland, et cetera, they recomputed that amount, and actually it lowered the actual expense to approximately $871,000. So while it does show a revenue reduction, that is not a negative. That is perfectly fine, because that is the amount that we will need to pay our claims. So don't view that as a reduction. The charter school, the charter schools in general are fully funded, so that's part and parcel with the 101 students for the contract school out in Laurel. But remember that when our budget increases, all of the charter and contract schools also receive a commensurate increase. So part of this $1.46 million will also flow to the other 3 schools, in addition to the enrollment growth at the Laurel Contract School. Everything else going down the page, to a large extent, is fully funded and fully matched. So I'm not going to go through each and every one. I'll cover the exceptions then. So really the exceptions that aren't fully funded, the first one will be the professional development initiative. About $226,000 was not funded. The $5 an hour bump up for the home, hospital, evening, and summer school hourly stipends was not supported. That would have been about $594,000. The 10 teachers for sort of retroactive class size reduction to help bring down the class sizes from some of those years when we were not able to keep up in terms of teachers for enrollment, they were not approved. The next item was retracted by the county, so again, it's not a reduction. If you remember this current year, the year we're in, the county government came to us and essentially gave us $750,000 so that we in turn could give that $750,000 back to them so they could continue to build out their underground and much more robust fiber ring high-speed network system, and they're connecting our schools as they're building out the system, so that's a benefit to us. We no longer have to pay Comcast or Verizon or BroadStripe. And again, it's a much more robust and a much more secure system. Their project's taking a little bit longer than they anticipated, so they don't need the $900,000. I would suspect that probably next year they will come to us and say, hey, we want to give you X amount of dollars so we can continue to build out. So that's, again, not a cut. They are actively working with that $750,000 that we had this current year. And finally, in the area of school start and dismissal times, the Board of Education requested $1.4 million, and that was not funded. So overall, on the position control side, the board's budget had asked for 100 positions, the authority to bring on 100 FTEs, and 90 of those FTEs were approved. Again, the delta between the 90 and 100 was those 10 teachers for class size reduction, enrollment size reductions, but for those years in arrears. So 90 to 100 FTEs. And overall, as you'll see, again, that $34.8 million expense increase matches the $34.8 million revenue increase. So year in over year, 17 over 16, it's a 3.2% increase in its totality. I think with that, we'll pause and entertain any questions that the board might have.
Mrs. Birch.
Two things. I guess maybe we should rethink adding professional development for everyone in the school system if we're not getting any more professional development dollars. Also, I know that we've come to an agreement with the state and the county on the health care funds, but I find it kind of odd that it's listed as county funding for non-recurring costs, health care. I mean, I just want to make sure we all know that it really is recurring costs. I mean, we have health care every year, and this isn't going to solve our problem, is it? I mean, we still need more money, and we need more money every year. That's correct, isn't it?
Right. The way the healthcare plan essentially is structured is that we have an internal service fund, a healthcare account that captures all the revenues that come in from the government, so either federal grants or county government, the employees' contribution, the retirees' contribution. So there's an internal service fund that captures all of the revenue, and from that internal service fund are paid all the expenses. So no additional county revenue is going into that internal service fund. Essentially separate and apart from that is we have a healthcare fund balance that in a way is fenced off, and it is explicitly there for the purpose of being able to absorb those times when expenses exceed revenues, or we have higher than anticipated utilization or atypical claims. So very high but very rare one-time claims. So essentially it's our shock absorber fund. So the intent of this $10 million is to go into that fenced off healthcare fund balance to sort of put us back into a position where that shock absorber has a little bit more resiliency to it. That, though, does not solve the structural imbalance that we currently have and will continue to have on that internal service fund. So, yes, you're right. And it's going to require a multi-tiered approach. Certainly, we're looking at opportunities. So to the extent that we have leftover monies, funds in FY16, which we do to some very small extent each and every year, we'll be looking to transfer via fourth quarter transfer money into the fund to sort of increase its health. We've had conversations both with our healthcare providers and our bargaining units, because essentially there's going to need to be some shared responsibility and some partnering together to help manage the claims. Again, that is on the provider side as well as on the employee and retiree participant side. And then finally, without a doubt, long term, we're going to have to work at righting that structural imbalance by providing permanent recurring revenue into that internal service fund piece. So we didn't, as Mr. Mosier, I'll give him all the credit for this, he said, we didn't get into this hole over in one fell swoop and overnight, and we're not going to get out of it. So it's going to be multiple bites of this apple, multiple sizes, multiple sides of the apple, and we'll continue to whittle away at this issue to the point that, again, we eradicate the structural balance, have a healthcare internal service fund that is capable of fully supporting its expenses, and also have a healthcare fund balance that's resilient enough to be able to absorb those unanticipated hits that we know, just by the variability nature of healthcare, we know will continue to come our way.
And the reason that the service fund doesn't have the revenue that it would is because $18 million a year was diverted to salaries by over the last couple of years. So there's less money going in there, which then caused the healthcare fund balance to be lower than it would have been otherwise.
Essentially, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Frank.
Thank you very much for your thoughts here. I'd like to see if you could help me a little bit with this structural imbalance in healthcare costs. And I realize you may not have these numbers offhand, but I would be curious to know the cost of healthcare for an individual that has that service provided by our school system, and either, potentially the total amount of money or the percentage that the school system pays or the employee pays. Can you help me with that?
Unfortunately, I think your initial statement is there's a lot of numbers and a lot of different percentages. It's probably easier if we sort of put that in writing and provide it to you and your colleagues rather than us trying to recite those. Because again, it varies depending on which bargaining unit, it varies depending on which plan, it varies depending upon years of service. So there's sort of many sliding scales, and quite honestly, we couldn't do it justice to try to explain it to you orally. I think put that on paper will be much more useful to you and your colleagues.
I think that's a great answer. It is definitely a complicated and a difficult issue. I certainly understand, and I think everybody else understands nationally, things have changed a great deal, and how those numbers work out here with the school system, I think would be worthwhile information for all of us. Thank you.
Mrs. Pickard?
Thank you. So it's my understanding that even going to the state and getting this waiver, which is fantastic, stopgap, we're going to have to monitor our claims very closely in this next year, and there may be a need to go back to county council by the fourth quarter to shore this up, to pay our claims. Is that?
Yes, ma'am, and we've had those discussions with the county administration already. So again, I think the waiver, the non-recurring waiver, essentially is the county government. So it operates the same way again, no matter where we are in the 24 jurisdictions. But it's the county government and the school system collaboratively going to the state saying we're going to work together on this issue. We had a very good meeting with the interim superintendent and the COO of MSDE, Dr. Arlotto, County Executive Shu, his budget officer attended as well. And essentially we elaborated to them much the same approach that I just answered to Ms. Bird. So it's a multifaceted issue, and it has to be essentially worked at or attacked from various perspectives. We are absolutely committed to doing that. The county government is absolutely committed to doing that. I think the interim superintendent paid good attention, and I think the state arrived at a good conclusion. But you're absolutely right. We are going to monitor these costs every single month. Any changes that we can make in terms of changes with, again, our plan providers, our plan participants, both active or retirees, et cetera, will continue to shape and better inform each and every month this moving target. And by the time we get to the spring of FY17, so we'll be into the calendar year 17 at that point in time, we may have to work collaboratively with the county government in spite of our best efforts to shore up the health care plan at that 11th hour.
Ms. Sasso?
It is my understanding in private practice, they have basically, the health has gone that most of the private practice are paying for the individual only and not the family. It is my understanding that we pay for all the family members in our health programs.
Right. So one of the options, we have employee only. So we have essentially a one-person plan. We have a two-person plan, which could be employee and spouse, or employee and family member, a youngster typically, or we have a family plan. Family plan does pick up the dependents.
But we pick up the dependents.
Correct.
Okay. Compared to all of the other school systems in Maryland, or we can take them in the United States, do all of them also pay for the family?
I can't say all, but it is typical in the education sector that dependent coverage is offered. So the answer is yes. Most, but I can't say all, but most do have a comparable structure. But you're right, in the private sector, many, not all, some offer dependent coverage, many don't, and increasingly more plans are moving away from providing coverage for dependents. And I think that's just part of the cost containment activities that different corporations and different private entities are going through to constrain this expense. The two areas of the economy that on the expense side continue to far outpace the general cost increases, the consumer price index, et cetera. Those two are healthcare and higher education costs. So healthcare and higher education are both going on a much more aggressive trajectory in terms of cost growth than the cost of everything else essentially that we're experiencing. So not just here in Anne Arundel, but statewide and nationally, all of us are trying to wrestle with, if you have, 3.2% revenue growth at the bottom line, but healthcare costs are growing 6, 8, 9, whatever percent a year, that healthcare cost train is moving much faster than the rest of our budget train, and we are going to all, again, I stress all because it's going to take the actives, the retirees, the plan providers, and us as the employer to collaboratively work on bringing down the total cost of healthcare and also looking at increasing the contribution that the beneficiaries are making towards the
That was going to
plans.
be my next question. Do we have a limit as to how much we pay, and then we make the individuals or the family pay the rest?
So
For
we,
the deductibles?
right,
or
so
no?
we don't operate, essentially, we don't have a co-insurance. There's many different flavors of insurance, but we do not have the structure that says we will pay up to X dollars and then it's truncated and everything else you're on your own. That's not the type of plan that we currently have.
Okay, thank you.
Mrs. Birch.
I wanted to ask a question about what might happen next year. Is there, looking at this whole waiver that we got for non-recurring costs, I'm guessing this is not a trough we can go to again for the same thing? That we probably could not go to the state again to ask for a waiver for $10 million for non-recurring costs, because they might say, you said last year that this was a non-recurring cost, so how can you come back again and ask for an agreement for $10 million for the same thing when you said it was non-recurring?
Sure. So each and every year, no later than March 31, all 24 jurisdictions, again, collaboratively, and it has to be collaboratively, with their local county government can apply for a waiver. You essentially have to present a business case for it. And it's heavily vetted and scrutinized, and you essentially have to convince the state that this is something that meets their criteria and is worthy of them granting a waiver. So there is never the thought that just because you got it one year, you automatically get it next year. There absolutely is no precedent setting like you would think in the legal arena. That is not the way it works in terms of the non-recurring cost exclusions. They're all evaluated independently and uniquely. That being said, I will tell you my own personal opinion is that if we go back to the state next year with just a, please can we have another an approval for a fill-in-the-blank amount of dollars, and have not shown to them, because that's many of the questions, and Dr. Lotto is nodding his head, many of their questions were, okay, so where do we go from here, right? This is a one-time kind of waiver. A one-time waiver is not a long-term plan. So I think that if we had to go back to the state March 30th of next year, they would fully expect that the school system and the county government had essentially a better handle on a short and long-range plan to, again, eradicate this imbalance and sort of right-size the internal service fund, as well as come to an agreement about what should be the right size of this shock absorber, this reserve fund that we have. And they're fully entitled to do that. I would expect nothing less as a taxpayer of them to challenge us and the county government before granting any type of waiver.
I just had a question. The home hospital evening high summer school line, could you remind us when the last time is that they've had any kind of increase?
We don't believe that has been increased since, we've been told, approximately 2001. Yeah.
Okay, so they've gotten the same hourly wage for 15 years, at least.
I believe that's about correct.
Okay, thank you. So we want to move on to capital?
Yes, ma'am. So maybe these comments will, for Ms. Korbelak, you and your colleagues that were here last year, it may be, as Yogi Berra would say, deja vu all over again. The capital budget is very well positioned. If you take a look at the FY17 capital budget, you'll see in the far left-hand side that the request that the board put forward was $255.6 million. The appropriation authority that the county executive is recommending is $242 million. So it is very nearly, as I said to a reporter, the FY17 budget is either fully funded or nearly fully funded in each and every category, and the categories that are not fully funded are manageable to some extent. So the way that we traditionally look at this exhibit is those line items that are banded in a white font are essentially fully funded. So for example, if you look at priority number 2, security-related upgrades, the Board of Education asked for $1 million. The county executive's recommendation is to fund it at $1 million. Therefore, it's exact match, again, that white banding. Just above that, you'll see in the health and safety category, priority number 1, we'd requested $1 million in that category. The county executive's proposal is to fund it at $750,000. Ms. Seaman Crawford and her colleagues went through a detailed analysis of, for example, that health and safety. We have some prior year monies that are still available, and some of the projects have come in with favorable pricing. So that allowed us some flexibility. So even though we're reducing the new revenue into that account, it's not unduly going to constrain our ability to undertake the projects that we had intended to anyway. So, you know, for lack of a better word, it's kind of like not a cause for alarm. So the other differentials then, the maintenance backlog, we'd asked for 7, again, $5 million. That is going to require trimming of some projects. Again, we do have some prior monies to roll forward. Again, we continue to have experience and continue to hope experience some favorable bidding activity, price preferential activity, which will allow us to undertake more projects. Asbestos abatement and barrier-free were trimmed modestly, but again, there's not really going to be a curtailment to activities in those. We think we're still fully able to support those projects in the year ahead. The next 3 schools that you'll see shaded in blue, Edgewater, Tyler Heights, and Richard Henry Lee, as has been our norm, we ask for both a feasibility study and the design money for a project. And the county executive's recommendation disaggregates those 2 activities. So his recommendation will be to fully fund the feasibility study aspect of Edgewater, Tyler Heights, and Richard Henry Lee, but not directly roll out of that and directly into design. The next category, Crofton Area High School, you'll see it's banded in blue, and there's a $500,000 differential from our original request of 6.7 to 6.2. But as you recall, the County Council in March adopted a resolution that provided $500,000 of advanced funding for the design activities at Crofton through the extension of that original viability study. So that reduction, again, does not in any way adversely impact that project. It's essentially recognizing the $500,000 investment that has already occurred in the 16 year. Health room modifications, it's a modest $100,000 reduction. Again, it doesn't, it won't really curtail the activities. That is different than for priority 29, auditorium seating replacements. We had requested $400,000 to do an additional high school. That was not funded. We will not be able to undertake the seat replacements at the high school that we had designated. The playground improvements, that was not funded as well, so we will not be positioned to undertake either supplemental playground installations or playground replacement projects in the year going forward if that is not funded. Something unique you'll see in the athletic stadium improvements, actually the recommendation is for at a funding level that's higher than what we originally asked for. Through the General Assembly's actions, the General Assembly approved some bond program or grant funding to both Glen Burnie and to Broadneck High School. And so the reason it's higher is essentially they're recognizing the revenue, the additional revenues that were not previously anticipated for this program. So that's kind of a good problem to have when you have more money than you originally asked for. And we are extremely thankful, and I'll say this in the end, but we're extremely thankful for our local delegation who continues to advocate on the part for grants so that many of these good programs can continue to occur at many of our schools. The driveway parking lot project was trimmed, but again, we have some prior year's money and we can sort of right-size some of these projects so it won't adversely impact that. And then finally, the school off-site program is fully funded. Mr. Anderson, who's the engineering manager for the Traffic Engineering Bureau of Public Works, co-manages the project, and it's a wonderful program where collaboratively the school district, specifically our transportation officials, work with the county transportation officials and work with the county police department to identify areas where sidewalks or crosswalk improvements can occur to facilitate walking to school in lieu of having to be bused to school. So that was fully funded. If you flip to the next page, it's oriented in a landscape manner, and I'll just quickly breeze through this. So you'll see on the right-hand side, shaded in blue, is the county executive's proposal, and it's juxtaposed to the original request. So in terms of the county funding directly, we had asked for just over $107 million. The county executive's recommendation is $101.6 million, so very close. On the state, we had originally asked for $54.3 million from the state. We will be receiving approximately $46.4 million in combined funding from the state. I think you saw a press release that came out from the superintendent, Mr. Mosher, just recently. That is essentially a record all-time high in state support for the public school construction program. The governor's office and the two presiding officers, Senator Miller and Speaker Bush, just as recently as last week, very openly and very forcefully advocated for their continued support and funding of public school construction, both in terms of expanding the size, the capacity of schools, not only here in Anne Arundel County, but across the state. And then also more specifically to begin to tackle this large infrastructure backlog of aged schools, both in terms of their infrastructure and the suitability, their educational or programmatic deficits that, again, are not only here but elsewhere. So the state obviously committed to helping and to the tune of $46.4 million, again, a historic level of funding, both from the executive branch and from the legislative branch of county government. And we will not in great detail go over the last 2 pages, other than simply to orientate you to the nomenclature. So those, you'll see in each and every category the specific project. So if you look at health and safety, you'll see that we asked for $1 million in each year of the 6-year program, beginning in 17 and going out to 2012. The county executive's recommendation is just below that in a blue font, and the blue font designates that it is not a match. So you'll see that in 17, the county executive has recommended $750,000 and then $500,000 in each of the out years. If you go down a page just a little bit further for relocatable classrooms, we have asked for $1,500,000 in each of those 6 years. The county executive matched that in the FY17 year, but his out-year plan depicts 0 funding. If you go down further, for example, to the playground, almost at the bottom of that very first page, you'll see it's all in red font, so we've requested $300,000 in each and every year. His current 6-year plan has $0 in it. So the final comments with respect to the capital budget are as such. Remember that unlike the operating budget, they are completely line item appropriated. Both the county and the state government has complete and unilateral line item authority. We are not at liberty to move a single penny or a single dollar from any category or any project to any other category or project. Again, that's that explicit line item authority. The second thing is that, again, in the FY17 year, which is what the budget ordinance, the budget adopts the FY17 year. Everything beyond that is merely a plan. So this budget adoption doesn't lock in or prescribe what happens in 18 out through 22. The appropriation bill is specific to the 17 year. And then finally, again, just to, I think the commitment both on the part of the county and the state that I spoke to recently to put in what is record level funding for these schools, tied with hopefully, potentially, our ability to receive about $94.1 million from the federal government through the Department of Defense grant that we're applying for the Fort Meade High School, could position us very well heading into the year ahead. And with that, I believe we'll turn it over to you for questions.
Mrs. Burge.
My first question is about Jessup and Arnold. I saw that the state did not fund those 2 projects, but yet we are still fully funded because the county then made up that funding. So does that mean they're forward funding for us then the full amount of those projects? Is that correct?
Correct. Following along the model that the path that the county took with Severna Park High School, for example. Okay. The county government has made a decision that they're going to forward fund. They are going to fully fund these projects. The state has approved both of those projects.
Right.
So they've gone through the entire vetting process by the state. The state has approved them and has committed to funding them. However, because of affordability indices, so they've got capital debt affordability models that they have to comply with as well. Those projects, while approved and approvable, were not funded because some of these cash constraint requirements. So the county is fully anticipating that they have forward funded it, knowing full well that hopefully next year, or if not next year, over the span of the next 2 years, the state will reimburse them. Okay. And at the end, the county will be fully made whole. It's been my experience now for over 2.5 decades that, the state has never shorted me $1. So if they commit to a project, it's gone through that rigorous scrutinization project, and they say that we have approved this project for X dollars. That is what they will fund, albeit maybe not as rapidly as any of us had hoped. I think the county government has had that same experience and has the same confidence in the state, and therefore they're willing to take the risk to forward fund it, knowing that the state will make it up in the next 2 or 3 years.
And I know we haven't been able to do that quite as frequently, but other counties do that all the time. Like,
Yes, ma'am.
that's their common practice because they need to get the schools built more quickly, and they just go ahead and do it.
Well, this is our third year, so maybe
yeah, I'm-
fingers
I'm-
crossed, hoping this is our new norm.
I'm very pleased to see that. Overall, I'm really happy with the current year budget. I know that that's the only thing that's the actual law. I'm really disappointed in the 6-year plan that was presented by the county executive. I'm really disappointed for the kids at Tyler Heights and the kids at Edgewater and the Old Mill kids. There's a whole lot of red zeros on the pages that you chose not to talk about. I'm really disappointed that I know there's a lot of folks around who want a Crofton High School, but that's the only thing going forward in the 6-year plan. Edgewater, not happening until 2020, even for a study. Tyler Heights, not happening until 2020. Richard Henry Lee, not happening until 2020. Porterfield, not happening. Hillsmere, not happening. Rippling Woods, not happening. Old Mill West, not happening till 21. Old Mill North, not happening. Old Mill South, not happening. Old Mill High School, not happening. Just wanted to make sure everyone knew that. So that's a 6-year plan for the
So
county executive.
2 observations. One, as we have done each and every year. So on May the 2nd, the county executive introduced his proposal, but just like we have each and every year, as we go through the public hearing process and through the county council work session and ultimately the county council's budget adoption, we'll continue to aggressively advocate for restoring those projects. I know the superintendent is committed absolutely to fighting for the restoration of those projects in their totality. But if I can just elaborate a little bit further on the schools that are affiliated with the, I'm loosely coining it sort of the Old Mill project. We are currently in the process of doing a very large-scale viability study on the Old Mill project, which is inclusive of what do we do with the existing Old Mill School, and again, the project's looking at splitting it into 2 schools for replacement for the existing, as well as the new middle school. What do we do with the 2 existing middle schools that have to be replaced? The Rippling Woods Elementary School that is located on that same piece of property, and the Porterfield Elementary School that is part and parcel with the project. It's going to be an integral part to the project. So I would never take the liberty to speak for the county administration, but I think there is some consideration to let's see what transpires with the result of that very large study. The deliverable is due in June. It's due both to this board and to the county government in June. In all likelihood, we know, we highly suspect, and I'm sure the county government also suspects, that in spite of the plan that's here on paper, the execution of the whole Old Mill project, depending on which options are finally recommended, which options are finally adopted by this board, by the state, and by the county, may reshape or reorder the terracing of those projects. Again, the 2 high schools, the 2 middle schools, the 2 elementary schools, and possibly even the Cat North Center. So I think in all likelihood, the plan that comes forward in 18 that the board will see in September, and the county government and the state will all see in September, with respect to all those schools, may be materially different than what's on paper today.
Well, the September plan will be our plan, so
Yes, ma'am.
I'm assuming that it will be substantially different than this plan. And with all due respect, we put those schools behind Crofton for the very reasons that you just said. So it already was behind a school that was more ready to go. So zeroing out for 6 years, I don't think is appropriate, because if a plan is due in June, we would know before 6 years what could be done. I think that zeroing out all of these projects is disrespectful to all of the communities involved. And that's just what I have to say.
Mrs. Pickard.
I know I've asked you this before. Can you remind me where our air conditioning upgrades are in the categories? Are they building systems renovations, or are they, I forget.
Sure. So we tackle that through two different avenues. One is through our comprehensive renovation or replacement project. So, for example, and I'll just randomly pick, Manor View or High Point. I mean, they've got existing antiquated air conditioning systems, and when those buildings are completely renovated or replaced, naturally they'll get a brand new system. So that's a small part of the puzzle. The bigger part of the puzzle, the one that you're specifically asking for, is your priority number 5, building system renovations. Right. The state calls them systemics, and that was fully funded. So that is the primary avenue through which we replace or upgrade existing air conditioning systems, and that was fully funded.
Okay, and then I guess if you knew a timeline for the federal grant, you would have told us, so I'm just eager for that answer, probably.
Apparently it's a military secret, because even we're not allowed to know.
Well, that falls in line with Fort Meade, doesn't it?
I think, so the conversations we've had with the county government and with the state officials as well is the county executive's recommendation, and we're hoping the council concurs, is essentially to give us the authority, the appropriation authority, so create the vessel pre-approved such that if the grant is approved, we already had the pathway to execute the project. Gotcha. If they give us that appropriation authority has life. I mean, it will live. So anytime over the course of the next, year plus that we get that approval, and as long as it's at $94.1 million or less, we're fully approved to go. We don't have to go back and do sort of a reapproval type process, and the county government understands that, and I think the county executive clearly has created that framework for us. However, if the grant is not approved, or it's approved at a lesser value, that is what we're going to be authorized to do. Either not do the project if it's completely not approved, or if it's approved, just making something up, if it's approved at $82 million instead of $94 million, that is going to be the cap on the project.
Do you think it's a fiscal year? I mean, do you think that decision could come by July 1, or do you think it could stretch out? I mean, do we have just no idea? It could be 2 years from now. Okay, you don't know. Okay, good.
Apparently, it's much more classified than we're allowed to know.
Okay.
Yeah, we really don't know, but I think the question is a good one that you're putting forward, and certainly for the public to know that as slow as the process is moving, so this started with us in sort of a clandestine meeting in Crystal City with the powers that be at the military, with Alex and I, as well as some Fort Meade representation this past July. We did actually have a visit this week. It was Monday of this week that the next big step moved forward in reviewing the process, and they came out to meet with us. In the process, they want to see, all right, well, you want to do all this with Meade High School. What kind of construction work do you do in this county? So they started their day at Northeast High School, which is a great place to start. And so there was a lot of oohs and ahs, and they came back to me and said, oh, wow, you guys could do a lot with this building. And so that was it was a good meeting, I think, but it's a slow process. But I appreciate your question and the opportunity to share with the public, both here and at large, that it is moving, although slowly, it is moving forward. And we had a full-day meeting with the powers that be from around the country descended upon Fort Meade this past Monday.
Well, that's great. I'm crossing all fingers and toes for that grant. But I will say I've been in many, many high schools this year, and as I've also been in Meade for my own child's events, the middle school going over, it needs some love. It definitely needs some love. And I hope if we are stalled that maybe we could give it some attention.
Well, I think two things, Ms. Picard. I mean, since 2011, partially from state funds, but largely from county funds, we've invested about $25 million into that school just in the last 4.5 years already, absent this federal grant. So I think the way they're positioned today is incrementally better than they were just 4 to 5 years ago, but they have a long way to go. That's my first comment. The second comment, though, I can tell you from personal experience walking into that building today, the bricks, mortar, and drywall, that's one thing, but that school is a vastly different school today than it was and has been recently. Mr. Yor has really invigorated that entire community and really propelled that school to a new place. And I think we're really proud of that school.
Okay. And then I wanted to echo a little bit what my colleague said. It is disappointing to see these 3 elementary schools being pushed down the line. Those students are currently sitting in those schools or in those mobile classrooms and with other issues beyond just overcrowding. And it's sort of a call to action to the communities that are attending those schools to get out there just like Crofton did and advocate for yourselves. And I will be happy to help come July 1.
I think there's 2 tremendous opportunities. To begin with, this upcoming Monday, the 9th of May at 7 p.m. in North County High School, the County Council will hold a public budget hearing. And Thursday, the 12th, there will be a similar budget hearing also at 7 p.m. at Annapolis High School. Those members of the public wishing to testify can show up to those 2 sites at 6 p.m., beginning at 6 p.m. and fill out cards, speaker cards, to get on the roster to be able to testify to the council. So to the extent that you can, you and your colleagues can help get the word out about those 2 county council public budget hearings, that would be tremendous.
I had a couple questions. The first was, what auditorium seating were we planning to do?
It would be North County High School.
Okay. And sort of going along the lines for advocacy for those elementary schools, can you just walk us through a little bit, when we do a feasibility study and design in the same year, how long does a feasibility study take till it comes back to us, and then when would you move into a design typically on an elementary school?
We typically bring the feasibility study back to the board occasionally in October. November is probably our norm. So if we get the funding authority July 1, by the time we get go through purchasing, get a contract, get your approval, either at that July or August meeting, depending on the timing, that deliverable typically comes back to us, usually in that November timeframe. And then from there, we would hope to, remember, we look at 5 different options. So from there, we would bring it back to the board. The board would take a position on which of those options they wanted us to pursue. We would then transmit that to the state, specifically to the IEC, which has to either concur or take a different position on which of those 5 options. So we would wait to see the outcome of that state approval process. Once we knew, and hopefully there was alignment, so hopefully the state selects the exact same option and approves the same option that this board adopted, it is from there that we would go into the design phase.
So what part of the school year would we typically start design if everything was approved by the state?
It depends on, we could get approved as early as January or before January when we get that, when the Board of Public Works meets in Annapolis in January. So it could be as early as that or even maybe a little bit sooner. It could be as late as May. Typically not. Typically the state is really good about evaluating and providing that feedback to all 24 jurisdictions because they know that the work has already been done for the feasibility. The board has already taken a position. They know not just us, but the whole community is waiting on the answer. So the state typically kind of puts the pedal down to get the answer back to folks.
So we could transmit, we'd have the feasibility study, the state approves it, and we could be designing Edgewater, Tyler Heights, Richard Henry Lee in the spring of 2017, if all went well.
Winter or spring, yeah,
Winter or
depending
spring.
on how aggressively the
So
whole
according
process.
to this 6-year plan, we're going to do this design, or we're going to do the feasibility study. We'll have it, say October, November. We'll decide what we want, we get it to the state, we get it approved in January-ish, and then we're going to sit on it for 3 years.
That is the current plan that's before us.
And is that atypical? In the past, what's our past practice? Have we been typically funded for design and feasibility in the same year?
All of the above. Many times, we have on many occasions been funded for design and feasibility the same year. Sometimes they split them, and it's feasibility study 1 year, design the very next year. Sometimes it's feasibility study 1 year and a couple skip years until we get funded for design. So they've come in every flavor across the past 2.5 decades.
I am deeply concerned about this. This is an equity issue to me. We have students in some of our most impoverished neighborhoods, as my colleagues have said, in portables. They can't be under one roof. They can't have a facility that is worthy of, education around our county and state. We have a community that has been active in advocating, and I applaud them. But let's face it, that's a first world problem to say that we need our entire zip code under one roof before we need to address schools that have overcrowding and facilities issues. And I'm deeply concerned that this has a bunch of zeros in it. And I agree with Allison and Teresa that our communities need to activate if this is a concern to them. It can't just be a concern of mine and Allison and Teresa's.
If I could just jump in real quick before my colleagues speak. So as Alex said, this is something that we're going to continue to advocate for, as this board knows and the public knows, or to refresh everybody's memory. This process is not finished, right? So the county executive's moved forward with his recommendations, fabulous. He's been willing to work with us on many of these issues. But in the cases that you're referring to, in particular with these elementary schools, myself and Mrs. Nally will be in front of the county council on Monday afternoon as part of our yearly meeting with them to go over our budget. Each department within the county are called before the county council. And we will present our budget both on the operating side and things that we'd like to see changed and added to, as well as the capital side. So we will be advocating for that. Ms. Nally and I and Alex will be by our side to answer questions, and we'll spend probably several hours with them on Monday. And then again, we'll be speaking officially Monday evening during public testimony in front of the county council. So this process is not over. County Council will not strike their budget until the middle of July, so it leaves us time.
June 15th.
I'm sorry, June 15th, excuse me, middle of June. So it leaves time for us, this administration and board, to continue to work with the members of the County Council on this process and some of the others within the budget, but in particular what you're bringing to concern at this time. But it also leaves time for the public to be engaged, and that's what you are recommending, and so I appreciate that.
Thank you. I think, as we've said before, a budget reflects values. So bringing this and having a bunch of zeros is reflecting a value to me that I don't agree with. Mrs. Hummer?
Yes, I'm going to echo what my colleagues have said. I'm very grateful that everything has been funded up to this point. That up to there, it's kind of finishing the projects we had begun under the old MGT study, so those things are coming up. Having experienced firsthand with my children's school that was on the MGT study, the 10-year plan, but because it was not funded fully every year, was continuously bumped off, and now the school isn't even on the plan anymore because it was bumped back so many years. I know the dangers, the risks that come out when it's not fully funded to keep up with that 10-year plan that we all agreed, the county and the school system together made a 10-year plan to improve these things. And so it's wonderful that we are fully funded to finish up those projects we're under there. But again, we've got to start keeping up with the ones on the 10-year plan if we're actually going to get them done in the next decade. And these schools, Edgewater is a school that was built in 1950. And Tyler Heights is, the children there, the pre-K children there can't even go to school there because it's so overcrowded and the facility's not acceptable. And so based on this budget, we're looking at 2022 before those children can come back to their neighborhood school. So those are concerning. And again, grateful for that we're going to finish up all these projects and that those are all fully done and won't be put back, but I will continue and encourage the community to advocate that we go ahead and we start off our new 10-year MGT study that we all bought into and agreed to, that we start that off on target and in place so that these children at these elementary schools can have the proper facilities that they need. Thank y'all for all you do.
Mrs. Nally.
Well, I want to echo my colleagues' sentiments. I've been on the board 9 years. I've watched Tyler Heights, Edgewater, and I've watched the others, Richard Henry Lee, Quarterville, Hellesmere. They have waited patiently. But now as they've waited, these schools are, I look at Tyler Heights and it breaks my heart. And I agree 100%. It is an equity issue, and it is where we hold our values. Those children do not deserve to go to school the way they're going. So I feel strongly, I want to echo my colleagues and say we need to forge ahead. We need to look at that MGT study. We need to get out and really talk about where these children are going to school, what the future 2022, it isn't even, it's beyond my state of understanding, and I fully believe that we should step out and make sure that our voices are heard for these children, these elementary schools.
Mrs. Pickard.
It's my understanding that the $500,000 that got accelerated to Crofton was in order to place it in a position to get funding this fall, to start. And I could be wrong. I don't want to misspeak.
Sure. So that it's an unbuilt, unoccupied site, so we don't have any experiential history on it. It was transferred over to us. So a large percentage of that effort, it's really a viability study, which is different than feasibility study. The viability study essentially took a look at, is the property developable, and are there any environmental, are there any other impediments that would preclude that property that we own adjacent to the Crofton Middle School from, in fact, being built upon and having both structures, fields, road access ways, et cetera. So just like any developer, it's essentially a due diligence activity. Before you go invest $6.7 million into something, you invest a very small amount of money into it to make sure, to essentially prove your hypothesis that it is buildable, that what you wish to execute can in fact be executed on that parcel of land. So the purpose of that, of the viability study that was funded by the county government on the county government's ledger, that money was not transferred to the school district, so it was funded on their ledger, was essentially to do that litmus test activity on that property to make sure that before we make that big heavy investment, that we're not going to be surprised by something that X percentage of the way into it, we've got to slam on the brakes and regroup and maybe go somewhere else, let alone look at some other options.
Well, thank you for that. My point is the political will was there to accelerate funding for that project, so that now with our capital budget, it would be in place to start design. They made a choice to accelerate funding for that project. They could have made that choice for any one of these. I mean, that's just a choice. And like my colleagues have said, it's also, to me, a value judgment. This is exciting. I mean, it's great, the capital budget, the bottom line dollars. I think many of us are concerned about the choices we're making and the equity issues that come forward. That was my point.
Dr. Frank.
You mentioned the MGT study, and perhaps for me and the other folks, you could remind us about when the original MGT study was made and then it was updated. And I wonder if it might be of value to bring that to the public attention, that there was a methodology, a rubric for determining when and what schools would be built at what time. And I wonder if that might help move the process forward if more people were aware of that.
Sure. Well, the original study was initiated in 2005 and published in July of 2006, and it was always intended to be a 10-year, essentially master plan, a guiding document to plan the next 10 years forward. Knowing that shelf life of that 10-year plan was coming to an end in the last budget adoption cycle, the county government funded us or provided funding to refresh, to redo that study. So the rubric essentially took a look at the existing infrastructure of the buildings, took a look at the demography, so the capacity not only of the existing buildings, but also what's projected to continue to occur as the county continues to grow and our student body continues to grow. It took a look at the educational suitability of those properties, took a look at the technology, the state of technological readiness for those properties, and finally the site, so the driveways, the walkways, the playgrounds, the playfields, et cetera. And as you said, Dr. Frank, they had a prescriptive scoring rubric that all of that data, all of that analysis was put into. Thankfully, through the help of our Public Information Office, the entire MGT study, as well as the backup material for it, is all available through our website, through a link on the front page of our website. And any member of the public, I would encourage them to explore that and essentially get up to speed on those recommendations.
Perhaps I'm suggesting the best thing that we might be able to do is let that go out to the public. I'm not sure how many folks would pay attention to what information we previously have, but thank you for bringing that information forward.
Mrs. Burge.
I want to thank Mrs. Hummer for bringing up the MGT study again, because that just reminded me, as I'm looking at this, the MGT study again was a partnership with the council, the county executive, the superintendent, and the board, and something that we agreed that we would move forward with for the next 10 years. And looking at the county executive's 6-year plan, it appears as though his partnership ended when the plan came out, because I don't see any signs that he bought into the results of the plan except for where Crofton High School came out, because the rest of the results are not evident in his plans for the next 6 years. So I'm not sure if the only reason he wanted the plan was so that he could justify building a Crofton High School. And that to me is very disheartening, that we went forward with a plan for how we wanted to proceed for the next 10 years just so that he could justify building a high school. That wasn't what I thought we were doing. I thought we were trying to make good, solid, fact-based decisions. And yet, the very first year that he presents a 6-year plan, all of those suggestions are not here to be found.
Mrs. Sasso.
When I went to the board meeting in Boston, there was a company there, which was P3, the Public and Private Partnership Company. And I thought it was just an outstanding, because it had to do with construction of all of these dilapidated schools, and not only schools, but all of the government entities. And I brought back some information that I would like to share later on, because literally they will do the whole construction, they do the design, they do everything, and not a penny is placed until the building is delivered to the institution. And not only that, but they maintain the building. Part of the plan is they maintain the building for 30 years, and when they give it back according to the contract, they give it back with a 15-year guarantee, meaning the heating, the air condition, and everything like that will have the lifetime of whatever it is, 50%. And I thought That was just an outstanding solution to the problems, and that's what they were talking about. It was an outstanding solution to the idea that nowadays the government or the public does not have enough money to rebuild the structures that are getting dilapidated. And I will share that with yourself and Dr. Alioto, because they will come and basically sit down with you and go through everything of what they will do and how they could do it.
Mr. Horskamp.
Thank you. So, Alex, I know a number of our high schools are reaching maximum capacity. Can you give me a number of how many of them aren't yet? Like, how many of them have plenty of open seats or anything? Do any of them do?
Yeah, the only high schools that essentially are mathematically over capacity right now are South River High School's mathematically over capacity, and I think that might be it.
Okay, so
at the moment. Now, not to say that they don't have, many of them are really close.
Yeah, that's what I
so
meant,
it's
yes.
always like a nice edge kind of situation on many of them. But I think the only entire feeder system, from my recollection, that's closed to subdivision and development activities is currently the South River District.
Okay, so we have seats open in our other schools, whether or not they're close to maximum capacity, right?
Yes, sir.
So we're building a high school for a community that's been advocating greatly. I mean, I used to live in Crofton, so I commend them for what they've been doing. But we're putting that forward compared to elementary schools that are in dire need and have been in need for renovations, reconstructions, and everything, for a high school where we could put students in other schools that are perfectly fine. So that's what I'm getting from the county executive's proposal. So thank you for that.
Okay, is there any public comment on this item?
Hi, my name's Claudia O'Keefe. I had a question about the Public Schools for Military Installations grant. In its current form, I believe it requires a 20% non-federal cost share. Has that been accounted for in the current budget, or is that going to be handled hopefully when the grant comes through?
That's so part of the good news in terms of this particular project, and something that was alluded to with Ms. Pickard's question, is the fact that we've already put $25 million into Meade High School. And in our initial conversations, and since that time, but that was brought forward when Alex and I and the base COO met in Crystal City in July about what we've already put in that building. And the current structure is that can count towards the match. We wouldn't have to come up with something else, that the $25 million already put in over the last several years could count for that match.
Right. Excellent. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, guys.
And just before you guys, so thank you. This is, there are always issues with budgets, both on the operating and the capital side. We are in a much healthier place on both structures, capital and operating, because of the work of the three of you and your teams, and I just want to thank you.
The next review item is 5.02, presentation on revisions to superintendent's grading regulation, 2RA.
Good afternoon. For the record, I am Jessica Kutches, Legislative and Policy Counsel. Today I have the pleasure of presenting with Dr. Maureen McMahon, Deputy Superintendent for Academics and Strategic Initiatives, Dr. Kathy Kubik, Associate Superintendent for School Performance, and Mr. Jason Dykstra, Executive Director of Instructional Data. Collectively, we are going to discuss revisions to the Superintendent's Regulation on Grading. We will review some background and history regarding this regulation, highlight the improvements, clarifications, and philosophy around the changes, and explain how this will be implemented in our schools. In order to meet the needs of students and staff, the grading regulation is a fluid document that has been updated 8 times over the past 13 years. The specific provision related to redos or opportunities for mastery was included in the grading regulation for the first time in 2012. As we promised in the fall when we brought you quarterly assessments, We are now back to you for the specific purpose of amending the grading regulation regarding the redo practice. All other provisions related to the grading policy and regulation are not contemplated for discussion at this time, as these improvements are specifically related to obtaining mastery by redoing certain assignments. In order to provide the enhancements to the regulation that we will discuss today, the concepts and language of the regulation went through an extensive vetting process. First, there was a cross-disciplinary grading committee that met and continues to meet regularly regarding the grading regulation. Throughout the revision process, we met with the CAC, CRASC, the Superintendent's Teen Advisory, the County Council of PTAs, PIAC, principals, TAC, and teachers. I would like to extend a specific thank you to the CAC for their partnership regarding this effort, as they provided an extensive survey with a summary of the feedback that they received from their survey. While we received a lot of feedback, it is important to note that all the suggestions and feedbacks we received may not be seen directly in the regulation, but it is being considered as part of professional development and the implementation of this regulation. As you will notice, we are not recommending any policy changes at this time. So this is the superintendent's regulation, and no vote is required from the board at this time. Now, Dr. McMahon will review the actual enhancements to the grading regulation that will take place next school year.
So as Ms. Kuchis said, ultimately what we're looking for is student mastery of content. So we're trying to align the regulation such that we support students being able to gain this mastery. So we, including all the stakeholders that Ms. Kuchis referred to, we all want students to gain ultimately and reach their ultimate potential through the ability to learn and sometimes relearn the content and then be reassessed on it. So the notion is the philosophy is one of mastery and one of a growth mindset. We have to have opportunities for students to relearn and be reassessed. So then there are many questions that arise when you say opportunities for reassessment. So what does that really mean? Well, if every learner is unique and every learner learns in a different way, then they also stumble or struggle with different information. And so we have to allow assignments, assessments, projects, we have to allow an open, free choice of what is redone, what is able to be reassessed by each student. Now, of course, that comes with some exceptions. So initially, you say to yourself, is homework able to be reassessed? We would say no. It's about practice. It's about the daily practice. And occasionally, a student is going to, ultimately, a student is sometimes not going to be able to hand in their homework on time or hand in their homework. But that's okay, because we only allow homework to count for 10% of a student's grade during a marking period. So the idea is homework, no redo on a homework. What about those large projects that have multi-components? Well, what we say is yes, each of the multi-part components, if they're graded, they're open for redo. But by the end, if there is a cumulative grade given at the end of a large-scale project, that is not open for redo. Then we move on to the items during the last week of the marking period. At that point in time, we're trying to bring closure to things, both in ideas and move towards that quarterly assessment. So items due the last week of the marking period are not open for redo. But we will, and my colleague here, Dr. Kubik, will speak to the fact that professional development will be available such that high-stake items don't fall in that last week of the marking period. And finally, quarterly assessments. Those quarterly assessments are meant to be cumulative, and they're meant to actually assess a student's understanding and their synthesis of a lot of material. So they're not open for redo. However, we are going to go over the quarterly assessments with students. We want them to learn from them, and we want their parents to learn from them. So we will be sending them home, and they're open for discussion, but not a formal redo. So then you may say to yourself, how many? How many opportunities for redo? Well, remember, we have, as part of regulations, this notion of at least 9 grades in a marking period. So all the stakeholders and us together came up with no fewer than 3, no more than 5 opportunities during any one marking period. And that'll be determined Actually, we're empowering the teacher to make good sense and with good sense, make that decision, unless they're part of a team, and then the teachers will get together and make a recommendation and come up with one answer, like an English 9 team. They would come up with 3 assignments for all students in English 9. So if they had Miss Smith or Mr. Jones as a teacher, all English 9 students at any one school would have the same number of redos available to them. And finally, that would be approved by the principal. So once you select strategically what you're going to redo as a student, then how many times can you redo it? Once. The idea is that you know what you struggle with, you'll go to the teacher and maybe get some reteaching or get some suggestions from the teacher of what to learn, what to practice, and then you'll redo the assignment. Now, when you redo that assignment, you may ask yourself which grade counts. The higher of the 2 grades count. The idea is mastery here, and if you stumble again, granted, and we will have some students that this happens to, the idea is that teacher would recommend more work be done. They wouldn't be able to redo again, but the higher of the 2 grades would stand. And when does that have to happen? It has to happen within 10 school days of when the student receives the assignment back graded. So they do have a while to meet with their teacher, come in for help if they can avail themselves of it, or practice at home, and then come back in and submit the new redo assignment for a regrade. And now my colleague, Dr. Kubik, will tell you, how are we going to put this into practice?
So what's this mean for our kids next year? So this is actually pretty neat. Right now, a child is able to redo a certain number of assignments, but it really might depend on where they are in their middle or high school in our county. Are they in the northern part, the southern part? Are they at a middle school, a high school? Do they have Mr. Dykstra for geometry, or do they have Ms. Kubik? So it really could depend classroom to classroom. The idea is that next year, kids will know that no matter where they are in the county, no matter what classroom, what course, it's going to be 3, 4, or 5. So teams can work together and the principal can approve. So that's going to mean a new way to think about grades and redos for kids. So it means professional development. The principal will be responsible, obviously, for understanding this policy and supporting teachers to implement it. But what that means for teachers is we have to get kids to advocate for their own grade. Because I need to be able to think, how many do I have in a 9 weeks, and which one do I want to redo? Because as you saw, there's timelines associated. So that's a professional development opportunity as we bring this into the schoolhouse. But on the other side of that, that means we also have the opportunity to tell our parents and kids, this is coming. This is a great way for you as a child to advocate for your grade and for parents to be aware and involved in their child's education. So one tool that we're going to have is the course outline. Curriculum and Instruction has devised a proposed statement that can go in every course outline, and it's the same, again, classroom to classroom, course to course, school to school. And it basically outlines for teachers and kids and parents that they have so many opportunities to redo, and as you see in red up there, this teacher chose 4. So kids will clearly know at the beginning what kinds of assignments, the number of assignments, and how many of them they get to redo.
So once a student actually submits and completes a redo assignment and gives it to the teacher, when the teacher is doing their grades, the teacher will actually make a note of the redo grade and the original grade. And what that will do is trigger a symbol or an icon automatically into both the teacher's grade book and also on Parent Connect, and which is where our students and parents can access, kind of up-to-date snapshot of grades. So what will happen in the grade book is if you go onto Parent Connect, either the student or the parent, you will see a little icon highlighted right before you, a little paper sign, and all a student or parent actually has to do is hover over that icon and a box will pop up. The box in front of you says redo score is now a 7 out of 8, and the original score was a 5 out of 8. And then simply looking at the icons, one can quickly see how many redos that I've done in any particular course. And that, again, is also going to be available. That icon will also automatically appear for the teachers as well in their gradebook software. So how are we going to do this? Well, we start tomorrow. This team will be before the high school principals tomorrow with this presentation, and we will be going over. We've already worked with lots of principals and teachers on the update of this regulation, and we'll continue that. We anticipate and expect that our principals will begin the discussions with their teachers now until the end of the year as we kind of start looking at next year at this time. The Office of Student Data is offering, I believe, 14 different workshops and courses over the course of the summer regarding the grade book and how to account for redos in that. We also have a very robust online system where teachers can go and get directions on how to complete their grade books accurately and also best practices and tips. We're going to develop a video series as well where that would be available for students and teachers and parents, both explaining the philosophy of redos and how they work and also some of the technical parts as well. With that, we thank you very much for your time. We're open to any questions that you have. And we also have a sample video for you kind of highlighting what we've kind of shared with you here today.
Mrs. Scavage, I have a question about my grades.
Hey, what's going on?
So I earned a 75 on an assessment, and I know I can do better.
Would you like to redo it?
Yeah, I've already done 2 this quarter. Am I allowed to do 1 more?
Yes, if you take a look at your syllabus, you'll see that you can actually do 3 a marking period.
Mrs. Scavage, can I redo homework?
Actually, if you take a look at the syllabus, you'll see that you can't redo homework, quarterly assessments, whole research projects, or anything from the last week of the marking period.
All right, thank you.
You said I can redo this. I got a 75, so what can I do to do better?
Well, let's take a look at your rubric. It looks like your ideas are really strong, but you struggled with the writing portion.
So what type of remediation do I have to do?
Well, we can have you just do the writing portion. You can do just one part of it if you want. Can you come in tomorrow after school?
Yeah.
Hey, I really need to redo my essay, but I can't come in tomorrow. What should I do?
Actually, Megan, I have a handout describing the steps that you can go through on your own.
Okay.
So if you can't make it in, you can still do the remediation.
Okay. What if my second score is lower?
We'll keep the higher score. Don't worry.
Okay.
Can I just keep redoing until I get the grade I want?
You can't actually do that. You get 1 redo per assignment.
It was worth a try.
It was.
So when does this redo need to be turned into?
It needs to be turned in 10 days from when the assignment is given back to you.
Okay.
I guess I better get to work then.
Guess so.
Thank you, guys. Mrs. Hummer.
Yes, just to clarify, the video did answer a little bit, so, but it would be, hopefully they're getting remediation and we'll have a higher score with the redo, but if there's not, the higher of the 2 scores will be counted.
Cool.
And let's say, for instance, it's an algebra test and there's 10 questions and they got 5 questions correct and 5 incorrect. For the redo, would they have to redo the entire 10 questions or just the ones that they missed?
It's really up to the teacher at that point in time, but the teacher has the ability to say, you know, you really only you need to concentrate on these areas, and so when you come in, I'm only going to be retesting you or reassessing you on those areas. Or they could say, no, my policy is you're going to take a quiz very much like this one again.
So the teacher has some leeway in there.
They
then.
do.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for all the
Thank
work
you.
that went into this. I know that it took a lot of collaboration and work, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Mrs. Pickard.
Yeah, I wanted to say thank you as well. I know this has been a long, long process. And from a parent of, well, not a new 6th grader anymore, but a 6th grader, I know there's also some folks out there, both in our teaching pool and our parents, that don't think this is a good idea for whatever reason. And I would just like to say very publicly that I completely disagree. And I've turned the corner myself this year because my child's English teacher and I sort of had a meeting of the minds in September. And then I watched my child advocate for herself, go see her teacher at lunch, get a better understanding of a concept she didn't understand, and improve her grade. And I can't think of a better way to prepare our students for what life is really like. And I know we've used the example of, if you know, not everybody passes the bar the first time, or not everybody passes their driver's license test the first time. And if we're not taking time to give our students the opportunity to get that mastery of a concept, they're not going to succeed as many subjects build on themselves, certainly in math. And I just want to say again, thank you. And I know it's not going to be a simple task to roll it out, but I know you guys will do a tremendous job this summer.
Thank you.
And I know Georgia will be making sure her teachers follow the, follow the policy closely.
Dr. Frank.
I'd like to address this to Dr. Kubik with some concern because my children graduated from school when she was there, and I'd like to ask questions kind of on both sides. Question number one is a student may get an A, but he wants to be an A+, and A is not good enough. He wants to get an A+. Can the child take the test again? And then the question on the other side is, well, I just wanted to pass. As long as I get a D, I really don't care. Can I take it again?
So the straight answer is, if the teacher has 3 redos and the child has a 92 and wants to get 100, awesome. If that's one of the 3 redos. And on the other end, if the child just wants to pass, first we're going to have a little chat. But second of all, yes, that could be one of the redos.
Thank you.
Mr. Horskey.
Thank you. I just had one quick question. In the first slide where I gave the timeline of the redo policy, it said June 2012, the first inclusion of redo. Can you explain what that meant? I might have misunderstood.
Sure. So the grading policy has existed since the beginning date on that slide,
Okay.
but that was the first time that this reassessment provision was added in. So the grading regulation existed without this opportunity for redo until that date.
Okay, so this is when it was put into paper, this is how it happens. Okay, because I was pretty sure I
That's
did
when it
something.
became official, and Dr. Arlotto was a part of the team when that happened.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so it was, if I can jump in, it was 2012 when we introduced that. And there has been some consternation over time as we've implemented. So the concept of redo and mastery is not new. And so it was written into the actual regulatory language back in 2012. And as time has gone on, in consultation with principals and teachers and parents and students, as you're well aware in some of those meetings, we needed to do a better job with the language and a better job with standardizing how this can be done across across all of our schools, particularly our secondary schools. And so that's the reason now to bring it back before you with sort of tighter language that is more, we believe will be more readily accepted and easier to standardize and accept across all of our schools.
Mrs. Birch.
Yeah, I know that standardization was a big problem because weren't there some schools who would not let you redo it if you had a 90 and other schools would let you redo it if you had a 90? So I could try and get a 99, but if you were at a different school, you couldn't try and get a 99. Right. Okay, but so now everyone's going to know that there's no grade limit on it. Okay.
Right, that's
okay.
correct.
All right.
Mrs. Pickard.
Oh, and I didn't want to leave you out, Mr. Dykstra. Love, love, love the Parent Connect. I'm slightly addicted to Parent Connect, but that will be a huge help keeping up. Thank you.
Mr. Gilliland.
Thank you, and thank you to all of you. I think this is great. My day job, so to speak, is overseeing aspects of our curriculum development process, and I can tell you higher ed is moving in this direction. And as we evolve and do more online, there are certainly a lot of tools that can really validate this with online learning aspects as well. So again, kudos to all of you and best of luck as you start to roll this out. My question is just about equity. And we've talked a little bit about standardization. And I just want to ask what auditing requirements, if any, are in place to ensure that one school is not skirting the system, so to speak, so that all of our students, as they start to compete for colleges, et cetera, are on a level playing field.
Okay, so I'll field that one. So I want to go back to our students are our best monitoring tool, because if they know there's a policy, and they all will, they're very good at helping us implement the policy. Other than that, we do have, as Mr. Dykstra illustrated, a very easy tool to monitor, and then it would become the school-based administration who would be responsible for making sure that it's happening according to the reg.
And then if I can just ask a follow-up, and some of this we can certainly perhaps even go offline on if need be. For overriding grades in particular, a teacher enters grade X, we'll use different letters, in this case. The teacher enters X and believes that that student really has earned X for the semester, for a particular assessment. Are there overriding mechanisms that administrators can use to increase the grade that a teacher believes a student has earned?
So I guess I'll field that one. I think if comes a time where there's a discontinuity in what the teacher believes and what the administrator believes, that's a conversation for those two to have. And in our regulation, it does say we have to have how we determine the final grade. So it would come down to the two of them discussing their belief on what the final grade that the student receives should be.
And looking at artifacts and the documentation that the teacher has put in place during the course of the marking period.
So it's kind of like, I mean, and again, forgive the question, I'm thinking higher ed lens, department chair, dean, type appeal process. Does that exist? A student says, you know what, darn it, my B should be an A, and you teacher looked at this with the wrong lens. Is it a department chair that reviews?
Student to teacher to department chair to, in a secondary school, to assistant principal to principal.
Okay, thank you.
Mrs. Burge?
That may be something you want to pay more attention to, because I have heard stories from teachers of grades being changed without their knowledge or permission, because they gave zeros because they felt that a 0 was warranted because no work was actually done, and an administrator changed it to a 50 because 50 is supposed to be the lowest you can get, but the teacher felt that a 0 was warranted because of the absolute lack of effort that went into something. So that may be something that you just want to keep your eyes on.
Absolutely, and thank you for the opportunity to just make a quick comment about that. As you saw from the timeline, this grading regulation we've looked at in pieces because it's so complicated and it's so labor intensive on our administrators and our teachers that we've ensured that we've taken pieces of it. So we did quarterly assessments as we said we would in the fall. We did redos now this spring, and as we've discussed before, in this coming up fall, we will look again at the exact concept that you're talking about, zeros to 50%, making sure there's clarity, making sure the implementation is clean, clear, effective for our schools, and then also the way that we honor valedictorians, salutatorians, and the concept of the cum laude system.
Mr. Gilliland?
Thank you. Just to dovetail on what Mrs. Burge was saying, I'm glad we're going to have that conversation, and I know it's regulation. You guys are sharing it with us, and that's great. But as just one board member, I would request that we really define and put strong definition and behind good faith effort and what that means, what that entails. And I don't know, again, from a mechanism perspective, give out the syllabus in the beginning of the year or beginning of the term. Do students sign something that says, sort of like the handbook, hey, I acknowledge that this is the syllabus that I received, and I'm going to adhere to my end of the bargain. We're asking teachers to do a lot. I, as a student, am going to ensure that I provide good faith effort, and if, whatever that definition is, certainly with, some sub-bullets if need be, but if I don't adhere to this, and I don't get good faith effort, then, I certainly need to acknowledge that I get a 0 instead of that, 50 that seems to be, from what I've heard, I think Mrs. Burge is hearing some of the same things I've heard. The 50 seems to be, in some cases becoming the bottom, and that's not what I think it was intended to be when this regulation was done.
The good faith effort, the 0 and the 50, they're all really at the focal point of so many of our early conversations on this topic. So absolutely, those will be in the heart of the mix.
Thank you.
I just want to thank you guys. The visual with the inconsistency on the map in the county, very strong and powerful message that we've been able to.
Thanks, Steve Gray.
Yeah, exactly. And we appreciate that we're trying to move in that direction of consistency. And I think we've heard too from some teachers that they feel like those 95% kids that are trying to get the 100 is creating more work for them because they have to maybe do another assessment, drop another assessment or something like that. But when we remind everybody that they only have 3 or 4 or 5, and you got 10 days to make up your mind, if you're at the beginning of the marking period and you're getting 95s and you're using your redos, you're going to run out of them when you need them, if you need them later on for an 80 or a 75. I just had one quick question about Parent Connect. If I was a teacher that was allowing my students to redo something, 3 or 4 times, the same assignment, will that show up in Parent Connect on the little tab?
No, with the regulation that's in place, I can only redo an assignment one time. So
But
there's
as
only
a teacher, I could only input one redo into the system?
No, they could do more, technically, if they're not following the regulation.
Okay, so
Nothing prevents them from, they own their grade book, so they certainly could input another score if they wanted to.
And that's something that you all could see in terms of
correct.
Random auditing or something, if that was an
Absolutely,
issue.
yes. There are reports that can be generated with how many
Yeah.
redos a student did or how many redos a teacher has, and absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. Is there any public comment on this item? All right. Thank you all.
Thank you all very much.
The next review item is 5.03, supporting students' paths to college and careers.
Good afternoon, Dr. Arlato, President Korbalak, members of the board, and distinguished guests. For the record, I'm Anthony Alston, the Executive Director of Equity and Accelerated Student Achievement. My colleagues and I are here to share information and action related to college and career readiness, or CCR, as we often call it here in Anne Arundel County Public Schools. But before I invite them to the microphone, I would like for each and every one of you to know that college and career efforts are for all of our students. When we engage and excite our students to learning, we have the ability to transform their lives. It doesn't matter the content or curriculum, it's how we engage them in the learning. Research informs us that when our students are not engaged in school, their self-confidence is diminished. This leads to a lack of hope, which in turn increases the likelihood that students will become disengaged and potentially drop out of school, or struggle with seeing their role in their community or in life as a whole. You may ask, why are you so excited about what we're doing in AACPS as it relates to CCR? It's actually quite simple. Our goal is bigger than just making sure our students graduate from our system. It's to ensure that they are prepared to enter the workforce as productive citizens, either the day they walk across our stage or years later when they earn their degree. AACPS strives to provide students with rigorous academic programs, personalized and career-specific learning experiences, and social and emotional skills that prepare them for to be global citizens in an ever-changing world. We are educating a generation of innovators, students who are driven by ideas and inspired by innovations. We're not only preparing students with academic skills to make them college and career ready, but they also leave us with grit and perseverance to pursue and accomplish their goals. Our students are empowered with a growth mindset to approach their future with confidence. To bring a historical perspective to this, I'd like to have Skip Lee share some information about college and career readiness. Skip?
Thank you, Anthony. Hello, my name is Skip Lee, and I'm the Director of Curriculum in the Division of Curriculum and Instruction. I believe to better understand where we're going, we benefit from looking briefly back at where we have been and what we've accomplished so far. For decades, Anne Arundel County Public Schools has graduated high school students into the workforce and onto college campuses near and far, in some cases very far. Early on, we recognized the importance of affording students the opportunity to access rigorous coursework, and through the efforts of this board, we established partnerships with the College Board to provide advanced placement course opportunities to our high school students. Additionally, we recognize the value of the college experience and collaborated with Anne Arundel Community College to implement the Jump Start program in the year 1997-98, when 2 of our schools were on a 4-period day. In those days, we only had a handful of students who took advantage of this opportunity, which provided high school seniors the chance to begin their college experience before graduating from high school at a significantly reduced tuition cost. Seniors making this early college choice, taking 1 or 2 credit courses per year, have grown in acceptance and popularity over time. And we expect the additional growth of this program as Maryland's College and Career Readiness and College Completion Act moves forward into full implementation. As you know, Anne Arundel Community College's Jump Start program is now called ECAP, or Early College Acceptance Program. In the fall of 2000, we had 87 students enrolled in the program. By 2008, those numbers increased to approximately 200. And as of this fall, 2015, our numbers far exceed 600. In fact, 643 to be exact. And they're currently enrolled in Anne Arundel County Public Schools and taking courses at the community college. This represents a 639% increase in the last 15 years. To tell you more about this program and the numerous dual credit course opportunities we currently have here in the county, I'd like to introduce Richard Berger from the Office of Advanced Studies and Programs. Rich?
Good afternoon, members of the board, and thank you, Skip. As he said, my name is Richard Berger. I'm the Signature Program Specialist. I'd like to continue the CCR journey by sharing with you the many opportunities Anne Arundel County Public Schools and our incredible partners, I must say, at Anne Arundel Community College have created for our students, and to describe the latest in new and amazing opportunities offered in each of our comprehensive high schools. First, let me give you a brief definition of our Signature program. Signature programs offer all of our high school students a series of courses designed to connect classroom instruction with real-world situations and college and career skills relevant to each school's local community. Unlike magnet programs, which draw students from around the county to a specific magnet school, Signature programs provide rich thematic opportunities for all students in their home high school. Each high school in Anne Arundel County offers unique Signature-related courses for their students. Students can choose to enroll in individual Signature-related courses, or they can take multiple courses in their school's Signature pathway for the opportunity to earn Signature-related college credit while still enrolled in high school. There are 4 ways to earn college credit while in high school. These include articulated credit. Anne Arundel Community College credit is awarded for the successful completion of a high school program. This college credit is awarded, in this case, in articulated credit, without a grade. For example, the Database Academy offered at Glen Burnie includes a course that, when completed in the sequence at the high school, is credited at Anne Arundel Community College. Next, we have proficiency credit. And I'm sorry, I've lost my edit here. At the end of certain designated high school courses, here we go, mastery of content is demonstrated through the completion of a college proficiency assessment, and college credit is then awarded with a grade. For example, at Meade High School, students are getting credit for their high school signature course, Counterterrorism and Intelligence, a course developed by Meade staff, business partners in the industry, and Anne Arundel Community College professors. College credit will be given if the students successfully pass a proficiency assessment at the end of the course. 14 students took this course last year, and I'm very proud to say 100% of those students received proficiency credits from the college. 3 college credits for an individual high school course. Concurrent courses. Students take a college course outside of their school day or during the day if they are seniors with partial schedules. Unless they are taking a course approved for dual credit, in this case, they only get Anne Arundel Community College credit. For example, at South River High School, we have COM 111, Fundamentals of Oral Communication, that is given during 4th period. Seniors who have released status enrolled in this course have the potential to earn college credit since the course is not approved as a dual credit course. They're simply getting college credit. This course is heavily populated with South River signature global communications students. And finally, dual credit courses. In dual credit courses, students are recognized for taking a college course that is also recognized for high school credit. In this 2015-16 school year, there are 82 courses in the program of study for which our high school students can earn college credit. One example of this is at North County, where students are taking BPA 235, Introduction to Transportation and Logistics. As Anne Arundel County Public Schools has approved this course for dual enrollment, students will receive college credit as well as elective high school credit. This allows even junior level students to enroll, still using the course to meet their general education requirements while earning college credit at the same time. It is also important, finally, to note that under the Early College Access Program, students taking dual or concurrent courses for college credit are eligible for a 50% tuition waiver at the college. So all of these college credits are being earned by our high school students at half price. To give you more detail about one of our outstanding signature programs and college credit opportunities, I'd like to introduce Ms. Julie Cares, principal at North County High School, to share information about our trade, transportation, and tourism signature program. Julie.
Thank you, Rich. Good afternoon. For the record, I am Julie Cares, proud principal of North County High School. And I would like to share just a few of the incredible opportunities our signature program provides to the students of North County. On Thursday, May 26th, 9 North County seniors will walk across a college stage well before they walk across the high school stage to receive their diploma. Through our dual credit partnership with AACC, they will have earned 19 credits, passed 6 college classes, completed a workplace internship, and receive an industry certificate in transportation, logistics, and cargo security. This is a culmination of school community partnerships facilitated by the IT3 Signature Program. We have a school with a 50% poverty rate in a community where only 18% of our citizens go on to earn their college degrees. We understand that access is one of the biggest barriers to our students' success at NCHS. We have tried to overcome these barriers by bringing the college campus and the professors to them. Our 9th grade IT3 students represent the most demographically diverse cohort we have ever had. We have more students of color, more ELL, and more farm students than the school's average. The Equity Office has supported our efforts by providing us with additional staffing for our college courses. This program is not only accessible to a narrow group of students, but through expanded partnerships with AVID, Technology, FACS, ESOL, and even our STEM Magnet program, we aim to make college access, career coaching, and workforce development integrated into all of our departments and part of our school-wide culture. This program belongs to all of our community. As we have piloted, every time we hit a bump or a roadblock, we reminded ourselves that we were not just doing this for our school or our students, but for all students in the county. We knew if we could figure it out at NCHS, we would create a model that others could eventually use in their schools. We were honored to be challenged to this task. We are united in our commitment moving forward. We welcome others to learn from us, partner with us, and support us as we continue to expand this innovative program. To give you a broader view of the school system's partnerships and internship opportunities, I'd like to introduce Tammy Dietrich, Teacher Specialist in the Office of Career and Technology.
Thank you, Ms. Karas. Good afternoon. For the record, I'm Tammy Dietrich, and I manage the Systems Business Education Internship Programs. College and career readiness continues to be the mission of career and technology education. Students who participate in CTE programs at the Centers of Applied Technology and the comprehensive high schools have the opportunity to earn national industry certifications, state licenses, and college credits. In 2015, 89% of CTE concentrators met industry standards for technical skill attainment. College credits are earned through articulation agreements and college assessments that award proficiency credit. Since the inception of the Anne Arundel Community College Proficiency Credit Program in 2010, 296 students have earned a total of 888 college credits. Career and technology education students are leaving high school prepared to enter 2- and 4-year colleges, technical schools, apprenticeship programs, and/or the workforce. A large percentage of CTE students are dual completers. CTE programs foster leadership and workplace readiness skills through career and technology student organizations such as DECA, FBLA, Skills USA, the Technology Student Association, and the National Restaurant Association. Students that participate in these organizations have the opportunity to attend leadership conferences and skills competitions at the local, state, and national level. These organizations are led by their student members. The internship program is a vital component of college and career readiness. Currently, 35% of high school students participate in an internship. This number represents students in CTE, magnet, and signature programs. But please remember that all students are eligible for internships through their high school signature program. Our goal is to have 100% of our students participate in an internship within the next 5 years. Student interns are making an impressive contribution in organizations such as NSA, the Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Laboratory, and the National Security Agency, just to name a few. An internship experience in high school allows students to apply skills they have learned in the classroom while experiencing the full spectrum of expectations, job skills, and opportunities related to success in the workplace. Business partners that are involved in our schools through program advisory and integrated community stakeholder meetings routinely express the value of an internship for career readiness. An internship gives students a clear advantage as they pursue college and career opportunities. And to put this all in perspective, I'm honored to introduce Susan Love, Specialist in the Office of School Counseling. Susan?
Hello. As Tammy said, I'm Susan Love from the Office of School Counseling, and I have the honor of sharing how our programs and our initiatives are intertwined and are coming to fruition, and I want to share what is happening at the schools. For the past 7 years, AACPS has been implementing Naviance Family Connections, a web-based college and career platform, an amazing tool available at all high schools to empower students and families connecting learning and post-secondary goals. This tool provides counselors and teachers with the information they need to help students prepare for life after high school by affording them the opportunity to engage in self-discovery, career exploration, and college and career preparation activities. Students participate in developmentally appropriate tasks at each grade level, beginning with self-discovery. Through Naviance activities, students learn about their strengths, reflect on their interests, explore how to apply those strengths to school, career, and life. Career planning and assessment tools help students and families to learn about career options based on their strengths and interests. Students explore education and training requirements to achieve their individual goals, creating and revising yearly goals to guide their academic planning. Parents use Naviance to review their students' interests and goals and to support them in their post-secondary planning. School counselors use Naviance as a communication mechanism to support students and families in an understanding how selecting particular courses will help them in their academic planning for life after high school. This includes information about scholarship, parent events, and including upcoming workshops. Students and families access Naviance's college planning tools to assist in making informed decisions about their options by comparing colleges, universities, exploring scholarship opportunities, and applying to post-secondary institutions. I'm sure, Mr. Horskamp, that you are very familiar as you were completing your college applications. I could see that you used the eDocs and the whole at Central program. That's awesome. At the central office level and in individual schools, school counselors and others use Naviance to track student preparation for college and career. Reports generated from our Naviance allows an assessment of how effectively the school and the school system support an alignment between students' aspirations and their actual outcomes. This allows for program adjustments and service provisions as needed. Since moving to District Naviance this past July, I would like to share a snippet of data. Since July, we have increased student usage by 145%, parent usage by 198%, and staff usage by over 1,200%. That is just a fantastic, career and planning tool that our system has. AACPS Naviance tool empowers students and their families to begin their own college and career readiness. Thank you.
I hope you are as energized by what you have heard today as I am. As you've learned all about from my colleagues, the opportunities and supports for students to become college and career ready in Anne Arundel County Public Schools are immense and growing each and every day. And as you see, that our stakeholder groups in the school system and across our communities are engaged in this work. With the Maryland College and Career Readiness and College Completion Act of 2013, formerly known as Senate Bill 740, we are poised to continue our collaboration with our higher education partners, especially Anne Arundel County Community College, to ensure a seamless transition from high school to college for all of our students. These are exciting times, and we are ready. These are exciting times as we ready all of our students to find their passions, engage meaningfully in classroom and co-curricular opportunities, plan their future, achieve their potential, and successfully attain their dreams. My colleagues and I are welcome to address any questions that you may have for us.
Mr. Gilliland.
Thank you, and thank you to all of you for this presentation. I spent the better part of the last few years working with our network of universities in Central and South America, doing similar things here, and I'll be very honest and very candid with you. I think this is a blueprint for success anywhere, and I really think it should be modeled. Certainly, I'm using it in a different lens when I'm doing work, but this is just awesome. And I'm saying awesome without my sentence enhancer that I usually say before the word awesome, but it really is. But I usually have a qualifier for that word, but I do want to, just a moment of personal privilege, though, Madam President. Mr. Berger was my ninth grade English teacher, and
Didn't you teach him to use better words than that?
I don't know where he's going with this.
No, I wasn't going to tell that story, but you were a good disciplinarian. So, but truly, and I mean this genuinely, I owe my success to quite a few teachers, but some have really stood out. In my years in the school system, and you're one of them. And I genuinely thank you for all that you did, to help me and many of the other students during my time. And again, I just can't thank you enough for all the lives you've touched. You have made a difference, certainly for me. So thank you.
Mrs. Summer.
Thank you. This is incredibly exciting. This is to hear that there are students that are graduating with 19 credits of college. My parents would have killed for that. That would have been great. So this is, it's just amazing, and I hope, thank y'all for all you do with this, and I hope that we continue reaching out as many students as possible to get them ready so that they know what they're doing. But this is like Terry said, this is a model for everywhere to use. So thank you.
Mrs. Pickard.
Yeah, I echo the sentiments of my colleagues. This is fantastic. I was recently, sometime in March, questioned about this exact topic, and I know a few people in the community that could use this presentation, so I'll get Bob Mosier to maybe tell me the exact minutes, and I have a few people in the community that could benefit greatly from understanding exactly what we're doing to prepare our students for college and career. Exciting, fantastic. Thank you.
Dr. Arlato.
So let me begin by thanking the board. This presentation is a result of your request. And so thank you for the impetus for us to put this together. I should say us, for them to put this together, right? I just sit up here and try and look good. This is an amazing team. And it just really spells, and this board has heard me say it, and certainly my colleagues heard me say it, there's so much that we do that rarely gets measured or discussed. And these are critical opportunities for the growth of our children that don't show up on a PARCC test score, that may or may not show up on an SAT or an ACT, but they're critical to building the success of our children. And this is about access and opportunities. And so whether it's Naviance or access to the community college or the four-year institutions, cargo and logistics and this awesome program at North County that is a model for what we're going to be doing, building signatures to absolutely connect what's happening in the classroom to what's happening in the real world, because the data, the research is really clear. That's what makes a difference for students when they can see the why as opposed to the what. And we talked about this at senior staff earlier this week. And so I thank you for the work that you're doing. I thank this board for the opportunity to share. There's so much going on behind the scenes that rarely gets discussed and measured, and it's this team that brings it to you and brings it because of our kids. And so I thank you for the opportunity.
I'd just like to thank you all too. Mrs. Karish, you stole my son's English teacher from Arundel High School to create this wonderful industry certification program in North County. And I've stayed in touch with her, and she's the one that was sharing a lot of what you guys are doing there. And I really wanted the public to hear, because I don't think, unless we're up in North County High School, I don't think folks realize that students are graduating with 19 college credits. It's just a fantastic program. And the internship option, my fellow board members have followed me through this journey with my daughter this year, but this is no joke. She had 135 hours to do in her senior year before she could graduate from the PBA program. So this isn't like popping in on a business for a couple hours and checking it out. It's real world hardcore work, and for a number of hours. So these students are all going through that and graduating with, like you said, the experience in the business world, and it also helps guide them what they want to study in college. Like maybe that was something they thought they wanted to major in, but 135 hours later, you're like, no, not going to do that. Mr. Horskamp?
Being that this is my internship, this is no joke. I mean, all of my this is no joke, and I'm getting my STEM endorsement so I can show what I've learned from the STEM program and just from being at North County High School. And the teacher that you stole from Arundel, I love her dearly, and I've never had her as an actual teacher, but she has taught me so many things that will prepare me for college and just for future goals. Thank you, Ms. Garris.
Thank you all. I don't think we have any public comment about this. The public's pretty much gone. Okay. What's up, Lisa? The last review item is item 5.04, award of contracts. Do I have any board questions or comments? Do I have any public comment? Nope. Okay. Consent items, we're going to pull out 6.05 for a minute. So I'm gonna ask if we could bundle 6.01 through 6.04 plus 6.06 and move it from information to action. All those in favor? We now have an action item for those 5. Dr. Arlato, your recommendation.
Yes, ma'am. I recommend that the Board of Education award contracts as listed on today's agenda as 6.01, 6.02, 6.03, 6.04, and 6.06 inclusive.
Any board questions? Any public comment? All those in favor? All right, the motion passes. 6.05 is the last information to action item. Do I have a motion to move it from information to action? So moved. Second. All those in favor? We now have an action item. Dr. Arlato, your recommendation.
Yes, ma'am. I recommend the Board of Education award contract number 16SC089.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Gilliland.
Thank you, Madam President, and thanks to the board for pulling this one out. I am going to abstain on this. I just want to be very transparent and disclose that my work with Gilliland Group, I have business relationships with 2 of these firms, one of which is a winner, one of which is not. And for that reason, even though I don't touch this, I'm nowhere near this, I just want to be above the fray and abstain from voting on this.
Is there any public comment? All those in favor? Motion passes 801. I just had a couple of announcements. The next Board of Education meeting is Wednesday, May 18th at 7 p.m. The next Board Policy Committee meeting is Wednesday, May 11th at 1 p.m. in Conference Room 2A. And the next Board Budget Committee meeting is Wednesday, May 18th at 4:30 p.m. Mrs. Nally?
I move that the board goes into closed session to consult with counsel to obtain legal advice on a legal matter and to conduct collective bargaining negotiations or consider matters that relate to the negotiations.
Second.
All those in favor? All right, our public session's now adjourned. Thank you very much.